Freedom, man. That's what it's all about. You've got to groove on freedom, like the good book says.
Welcome. You are listening to What on Earth is Happening. This show will discuss the topics of human consciousness, mind control, natural law, the occult, and all issues that affect the freedom of the people of Earth. What on Earth is Happening will endeavor to shine light upon the darkness of our world and to offer empowering solutions to the problems we face as humanity approaches its critical moment of choice. And now, here is your host, Mark Passio.
Welcome one and all. You're watching What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. Ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. And here on What on Earth is Happening, we are ending slavery one mind at a time. Thank you for tuning in today, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Sunday, June 28th, 2020. This is episode number 228 of What on Earth is Happening. Today's show is entitled The Psychological State of Police and Their Supporters, Part 2. This is building on the information that we covered on last week's program. And as always, information covered here on What on Earth is Happening is cumulative information. That means that later shows are built upon prerequisite knowledge that is covered on earlier shows. Therefore, if you are a new viewer to the show, as I always recommend, you don't want to start listening from somewhere in the later episodes. You want to go back to the beginning of the show, of the podcast archive, and listen from show number 1 in order at your own pace. That is the way you will gain maximum value and full understanding of the information that we cover here on the show. So let's jump in for today. Again, the show for today is called The Psychological State of Police and Their Supporters, Part 2. Last week, we covered a lot of ground on this topic. I'm going to review a little bit of it. First, I do have a few event announcements, or just housekeeping announcements, I should say. The big news for this week, folks, is I have been included in the newest and latest Magical Egypt series. I'm really, really, really excited and honored to have been included in Magical Egypt 3, Part 3 of the Magical Egypt series. It is not released yet. It is actively being produced. I have already been interviewed for Magical Egypt 3. I want to thank Venice for including me in this wonderful project. I'm honored to be a part of it. For more information on Magical Egypt, which, first of all, folks, if you don't know about it, shame on you, okay? You should know about Magical Egypt. This is an absolutely phenomenal series with some of the greatest minds of our time talking about ancient Egypt and the mystery traditions thereof. And if you're not already intimately familiar with Magical Egypt, you should absolutely acquaint yourself with it because it's one of the best docu-series out there, okay? This was began by John Anthony West and is continued today in the form that it is. They recently released Part 2, Series 2, with all of the videos and ancillary interviews. I have started watching Part 2, and it's absolutely great. I'm going to be in Part 3. For more information on this fantastic documentary series, please visit their website at magicalegypt.com. I have several quick announcements that I want to go through again for the gifts area of my website. This is the last week I'll be doing this. I said that I was going to basically do this for 1 month into the, modern episodes of the show after coming back after a long hiatus. My newest presentation, Worldview Violence and the Real Pandemics, is now available exclusively on gifts.whatonearthishappening.com in the form of a flash drive where you can get the HD MP4 video or in DVD format. So you can pick that up at gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. It will probably remain in gifts for at least another 2 months, after which I will release it for free on YouTube and my other media platforms. We are still accepting donations to complete my premiere documentary called Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law. I want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart who has donated to this project so far. You have made it go much better and smoother, enabled me to pay a video editor, and we're making pretty rapid progress on this. We're going to really amp up the production now as a result of the budget. As a result of people's generous donations toward What on Earth is Happening in general as well, we are working today with a brand new video camera that is the same quality as the existing camera that we have, so you should notice no difference in quality during video switching. So thank you to the people who made this happen through your generous donations. What on Earth is Happening is entirely viewer and listener supported. We are supported by your voluntary donations, and that is how we operate here. So thank you to everyone who has made everything possible here at What on Earth is Happening. We could not do it without your support. There are 5 donation tiers toward the documentary effort. 100% of donations go directly to production costs. All donors will receive a complimentary copy of the completed documentary on both flash drive and DVD. You can make donations for this effort at gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. We also have new t-shirts being printed right now. Usually there's a 3-week turnaround time, so I'm assuming they're almost close to being done. We'll probably have these in the next week or 2. Please be patient. I'm just taking a one step at a time approach with this, but the order is in. The shirts are actively being produced, and we should be receiving a call or an email to go and pick them up in the next couple of weeks. So, this is one of the new designs called Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law. I want to show these up close because some people asked to see a better rendition of the artwork on this. This is the front of the t-shirt. This is the logo for the documentary. We decided to do a 2-color shirt for this one. And this is the back of the shirt design. As morality increases, freedom increases. As morality declines, freedom declines. So that's the actual artwork on the new Mark Passio and the Science of Law shirt, coming soon to What on Earth is Happening gifts, donation gifts. Also at donation gifts, available is the complete Mark Passio One Great Work collection. This is all of my publicly available work, all on one very small solid-state drive with a nice keychain tag. All my publicly released presentations and presentation slides. All archived interviews and ancillary videos that I've done from 2009 to the present day. The entire What on Earth is Happening podcast series, with all associated images and reading materials that I've talked about and linked on the podcast series. My punk rock band, The Founders, our No Masters, No Slaves EP with ancillary materials. And this is all packaged on one beautiful and ruggedly built external SanDisk brand 500 gigabyte solid state drive that has both USB-C and USB 3 connections. Available at gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. The ARC drive is still an offer that I am making available, and tons of people are taking me up on this. Folks, ARC drives have exploded, let me tell you. People are scrambling for this information. This 1 terabyte hard drive that you send to me, I will fill up with 1 terabyte of my research material that has led me to the understanding and conclusions that I present here on What on Earth is Happening weekly. It contains 1,800 video files, over 8,000 digital books in the form of PDF and EPUB files, and over 20,000 audio files in MP3, mostly MP3 format. You can get the details of the ARC drive at whatonearthishappening.com/ARC. And you can fill out the form to receive shipping instructions there. I am in the works right now. I am working on ARC 2.0. So once again, as I said last week, I have this about 80% done. I haven't had much time to complete working on it. I am actively working on that to get it completely finished. But it's going to be coming soon, and this will be the last you're going to be hearing about the ARC and the new ARC until the new ARC is completed, and then I will let you know on the show. So we won't be going through a lot of these, gifts announcements in later shows. I said that I would do it for a month, so this is week 4 that we're doing it, and we'll probably be cutting a lot of this out of the next show. However, what I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about is the How to Become the True Media online seminar, an intensive 23-week technology skill sharing class/seminar that I will be hosting via Zoom software. And I'll be sharing my desktop and tutoring people in real time on all the skill sets necessary to basically become the new media, to do what I do here on What on Earth is Happening. This will be taking place Tuesdays from 8 o'clock p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Eastern U.S. Time. That's 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific Time, starting Tuesday, July 7th, 2020, and proceeding over the next 23 weeks and concluding. The last class will conclude on December 8th, 2020. To attend this 23-week seminar will be a $523.93 personal donation, and you can enroll at gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. Regarding enrollment, I want to talk a little bit about this week. First, we have probably around maybe 10 slots, maybe less, left in enrollment. So if you haven't gotten in, now is the time to do it, and that's all I'll say about that, because enrollments are going to fill up this week for sure. Next is I want to talk about the skill sets, but then I want to talk a little bit about the email that you will receive once you enroll, because there are 3 steps that you need to take to complete your registration for the seminar. This ensures that you will be ready on day 1 to jump right into the Zoom meeting and be ready to receive the tutoring, in the very first class. We want people to get maximum value, ladies and gentlemen. We don't want you to waste any of your resources here. We want you to gain maximum value from this seminar. Okay, so I want to talk about what you will need to do as an enrollee, as a student of the seminar, to just briefly get ready. And we want to encourage people not to wait till the last minute to do that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the skill sets I'll be teaching briefly, and then I want to show people the email that they'll receive. Okay, and what you need to do as your next steps. Because I feel like it's very important to do this for me to fulfill my obligation to do everything that show people everything that is necessary to get ready if you're a donated enrollee in the class. We don't want anybody missing any class sessions, and we want you to get all the value for your generous donation. Okay, so the skills that I'll be teaching as part of this seminar are as follows. Basic operating system skills. And these skills will translate across any platform. Any operating system you happen to be using, they will translate across, whether you happen to be on a Windows system, a Mac system, or a Linux system. File systems and disk formatting. Well, I'm also going to be covering, as part of file systems, backup. That's basic operating system skills as well. But I'm going to be teaching you how to back up your data as well. File and folder management, or in other words, the hierarchical file system, the HFS. Workflow and best practices. Word processing and publishing. Internet and networking basics. How to search the web and the dark web effectively with very good efficiency. Graphic design. Basics of graphic design. This will be a basic, introductory, and a little bit of intermediary skills. But these will not be advanced, professional, like high-end techniques. We're going to be teaching people how to how to crawl before they can walk, folks. That's the motto here of this first iteration of how to become the true media. You got to crawl before you can walk. So we're going to be teaching very basic skill sets in these areas. Okay? I don't want anybody intimidated thinking I'm going to be jumping in teaching really advanced stuff. Okay? That being said, if you are very advanced, this is probably not the course for you. This is the course for people who don't know much about these areas of technology and want to learn so that they can start teaching natural law themselves in a public way. That's who this is intended for. Okay? Basic graphic design, basic print publishing, how to build presentations. like we do here for the show every week, or how to build a presentation that is like any of my other formal presentations that I've delivered and are available, on the internet. Basic audio editing and publishing, basic video editing and publishing, basic web publishing. How to do video conferencing, things like Skype, Zoom, things like that. Basic sharing via cloud services if you are collaborating with others, how to share documents over a cloud service. Again, not something that I highly recommend doing things with a lot of mission critical work, but sometimes if you are collaborating with somebody, that becomes necessary. We're going to show people the very basics of how to do that. And then some instruction regarding hardware and equipment, physical equipment. So those are the skill sets they're going to be taught. And now what I want to do is step out of this presentation and just show people a document that I put together on that they will be emailed. Okay, so when you enroll, you could switch back over. You will receive this email. There's nothing that is classified or anything that anyone can't see. I want to go through this because it's very important that people enroll, the people who have enrolled, who actually, give a donation to attend, and then we say, yes, you're enrolled. Okay, you need to take these next 3 steps on your own, and you don't want to wait. You want to do this now. Okay, so the first step, you'll receive an email that thanks you for enrolling and tells you the dates of the seminar. And then it says, please complete the following steps immediately to get ready for the seminar. Step 1, to attend the weekly classes, you will first need to create a free Zoom account using the same email address you used to enroll in the seminar at zoom.us/signup. Okay, so you have to register in Zoom. You have to create a free Zoom account. You do not need anything beyond a basic free Zoom account. You don't need to do the pro account. The basic free account is all you need. Okay, step number 2. You need to download and install the Zoom client for meetings. This is a simple piece of software that allows you to connect to a Zoom meeting. That's all it does. Okay, you will need to download this from the link that we send you, which is you're able to click that right there in the blue that says Zoom client for meetings. And I highly recommend you do this on a desktop or laptop computer. I do not recommend doing this on a mobile device such as a tablet or a smartphone. You will not have as good of a experience if you do it on the mobile platform. I really recommend doing it on a computer, on a desktop or a laptop. That being said, if you have no other option to join the class, you can do it through a tablet or a smartphone, but I really don't recommend that. Okay? People have been asking about minimum requirements for their computer system. If you have a relatively modern computer, you'll be fine. Okay? You can click into minimum system requirements for the Zoom client if you wish to read those over. I wouldn't really sweat it too much. If the Zoom client opens on your computer, you're going to be fine to enter the class. Okay? Step 3, very important. After creating your free Zoom account, please register your account for all 23 weekly meetings by clicking the below link. So this is a private link that people will receive once they enroll. All this does is it ensures that only the people who register only the people who enroll through gifts are registered in the class. So only the enrolled students actually can enter the class. So all you will do is click that link there after you set up your Zoom account and your Zoom software. And then that will enable me to allow you access into the meeting. That's all that link does, okay? And then you will be able to receive a link back that will let you put that on your calendar for a reminder when the classes are happening. And it will just, get you actually registered. Your Zoom account will be registered in the seminar. So please, we have to be able to get in touch with you folks. So, if you enroll, don't enroll with an email you never check, because we are sending you things. And please put your real information in for enrollment. If you put fake information in on enrollment, you're going to have a hard time receiving potential emails and instructions from us. And, we are fulfilling our obligation to contact you with the necessary next steps to take to enter the class. So that's what I'm going through this for. So that I have fulfilled my obligation to explain to people this is what is required to enter the actual classes. So please don't ignore these emails. Make sure they're not in your spam folder. check for them now, that you will have them if you enrolled. And do not wait on doing this. I want to reemphasize that greatly. Don't wait until the last minute to do this, because then if you have problems getting that software in, we can't help you. If you have problems, any problems, we'll help you through it. We'll talk you through it. We'll call you. Okay? Please, if you have problems, email truemedia@whatonearthishappening.com. The email again, if you have any issues in enrollment during any part of the enrollment or any questions about enrollment, the email to contact is truemedia@whatonearthishappening.com. That is in the email. If we switch back, there it is, truemedia@whatonearthishappening.com. If we switch back over to the slides, you can see that there are 2 places that you can click for that. Okay? I explain more about how the classes will work in this email. You can click that email right here if you don't receive your invitation to join, and if you have any questions regarding the enrollment or schedule. Okay? So, I think that really covers it, what I wanted to say about that, and I'm explaining this is why we are doing this and taking a moment to go through this information, because this fulfills our obligation. We are telling you, we need to be able to contact you. If you have problems, contact us. Okay? Do not wait for the last minute, folks. If you have enrolled, you've put forward your hard-earned resources to attend this seminar. Do not wait for the last minute. Do these 3 things now. Do them now. Don't wait until the Tuesday of the class. It will be a very silly thing to do to wait until the last minute, because then we will not have the time to help you get this done. Finish the 3 steps that we have asked you to complete to be ready to taking the class on the very first day. Okay? Please, I'm imploring people to do that. Don't wait till the last minute. So that's all I have to say about that for now. Let's jump back over to my slides. This is also the last week I'll be telling people about the positions that we want to fill here. This will remain on whatonearthishappening.com/help. We do have lots of people who have responded to this call for help. So really big things are in the works here at What on Earth is Happening. It looks like we're going to be able to keep everything for now free, and we will not have to go to any type of a subscription model or paywall. It looks like we have some in-house graphic design help. We have certainly some web development help for sure. Video editing, we have some remote help, which I'm accepting in lieu of help in person here, and it's very good help. And we still don't have any tech support in-house. So I had to make another RJ45 Cat6 Ethernet cable today. I have a good crimper, and my producer gave me some praise about that last week. It was pretty funny. I'm pretty fast with the making of that type of cable. I had to do another one here today, but still don't have any in-house tech help. I would really, really love to have that taken off my shoulders. So if anybody's a good tech person and knows their way around desktop systems on the Mac platform and Windows platform, and knows basic, AV equipment and networking equipment, absolutely, I need the help. Okay, so these positions will be listed and taken down once they're definitively filled. But you can go to whatonearthishappening.com/help, and the email links to inquire about, possibly being part of the What on Earth is Happening team. You could email Leah at whatonearthishappening.com. All right, let's go back to the slides. Yeah, just an update. The coronavirus has been mutating. Yeah, sorry, folks. Just kidding. That's what it was all along. Just a little bit of humor thrown in there, but it's really absolutely true that we are turning into a totally mass psychotic communist society. That's what's really taking place in our world today. There is mass psychosis taking place. And if you haven't figured it out yet, that this is a cult, the government is a cult, that the police are a cult, that all the so-called woke movement is a fucking cult, you don't know what's going on. You think you know what's going on, but you don't. And this isn't to say that I buy into politics and I'm on the right wing. Anybody who accuses me of that, you're also a dunce. You also don't understand the dialectic that you're being played off against. You don't understand how mind control works. You don't understand how deep occult psychology works against the population. And you know what, folks? I see too much of this. I see too much of this in people who claim to be awake. And you're not awake if this is how you think. You're not even close to being awake. Okay? If you're leaning left or right and you're not understanding it's all an illusion, it's all bullshit, it's all there to just play people off against each other so the ruling class can continue to rule, you have no clue what's going on in this world at all. Not even a little bit. Look, folks, I've promised myself this week I'm not going to get ultra crazy. I have really gone off the handle in the last couple of weeks, and I realize this. I'm angry. I'm very angry, okay? I've gotten some good feedback. I've heard people tell me, Mark, you were on fire. I love the energy. I've had people say, it's a little much. I've had other people say that when everybody gets as mad as Mark Passio, the world's going to change. That kind of sacred anger drives the change that we want to see in the world. If we understand what's really going on and we're angry about how absolutely pathetic what's going on is and how people have fallen for it. So that being said, I just want to let people know, this has nothing to do with politics, folks. This is all about getting past the political, psychological polarization. And this is what we talked about last week. We didn't get into the political side of it. We got into the side of how are they creating a society of masters and slaves. So I'm going to review a little bit. I'm not going to go as in depth. Just want to touch upon some of the points to review a little bit from last week, then get into new material. But what I do want to say at this point is, we have to stop falling for all psychological polarization. That includes political polarization. That includes left versus right wing, conservative versus liberal. This is all just a divide and conquer strategy psychologically to weaken us mentally and ultimately to conquer us and enslave us and rule us. So last week we talked about the psychological polarization methods. These are dialectical polarization methods that are employed between the police and their supporters. One are left brain, namely the police, which break down into the order-followers and the psychopaths. And then their followers break down, or their supporters break down into the bootlickers and the cowards. All people who want to pass off personal responsibility off onto other people. In the example of order-followers, they want to pass off responsibility to decide what is right and what is wrong. They don't want that responsibility, and they want to pass it off to the order givers. And they say, we don't write the laws, we just enforce them. Well, guess what? That makes you an immoral being. On its face, that makes you immoral, because you are not actively looking at for yourself and judging for yourself which behaviors are moral because they do not initiate harm against other sentient beings, and which behaviors are immoral because they do initiate harm to other sentient beings. An order follower does not do that. They just act upon what they are told to do. And that lack of the exercise of conscience and that abdication of their personal responsibility to do so makes them bad people by definition. And they don't understand that, and their apologists don't understand that. Their worldview, because of chronic left-brain imbalance, is misanthropic. It has a strong belief in the concept of authority, which is a false religion, a total lack of empathy, which makes a class of them, a large chunk of them actually, psychopaths, whether primary or secondary psychopaths, an inborn desire to control others because of their own perceived inadequacy complexes or real inadequacies, and then they try to justify their own violence of their own behavior as a means to an end. The other side, the right brain imbalanced, bootlickers and cowards, have a misanthropic worldview just like the police do, and that's why they want people controlled. They also believe in the religion of authority, the false religion of authority. They have a total lack of responsibility to engage the self-defense principle for themselves. They want to abdicate that personal responsibility. They desire to be kept safe and protected, which can never be done by someone else, and which the police do not do, which we're going to talk about very in depth on today's show. And they also justify violence, but in this case, they justify the violence of others as a means to an end. They are condoning and supporting the violence of others. In this case, condoning and supporting the violence of the police and the politicians who command that violence. See, folks, we have to stop seeing any of this. A lot of people will think, oh, because you're against the police, this is a leftist approach. No, it is not. It's not a left-wing or a right-wing approach, folks. That's your mental schism that is in the way of seeing truth because of the religious divide, the psychological, the occult influenced and set in place by the dark occult, psychological polarization division that you yourself have fallen prey to. Do not attribute those qualities and characteristics to me. Don't tell me I lean left or right. It's all a bullshit illusion, and I've said it so many times, someone could puke at how many times I've said it. And I'm tired of being accused of it because you're a know-nothing and you want to insist you know where my mindset is at. Don't fucking tell me where my mindset is at. You know nothing of my mindset at all. It's the exact other way around. I know just about everything there is to know about the people who control your mindset and their methods. You don't understand those tactics if you fall into the bullshit divide of politics. So don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. It's you who lack knowledge. It's you who lack understanding. And I'm not some, person who's going to just sit back and let people tell me what I know. You don't know what I know, quite frankly. And guess what? I'm talking to some of the listenership out there, some of my actual viewership. You're not exempt from this. It's mostly the dumbasses that are out there in the public who happen to catch a show or two, But let me tell you something, folks. My own viewership is not exempt from this. A lot of you are still politically leaning and don't understand. Please switch back over to the slides, that it's all a goddamn cult. All of it. That's all it ever has been. That's all it ever will be. Politics is a dark, occult, religious cult. That's all politics is and ever has been. And guess what, folks? If you don't think so, you're just wrong. That's it. You're just wrong. I don't need to justify it. I don't need to explain it any further than I have. You are just incorrect if you don't understand this slide. There is no such thing as being on one polarization side or another and having your worldview aligned to truth. Because if you agree with either side of the political divide, you're in a cult. You're in a cult belief system. Okay? Just because I talk about how sick the left are and how we're moving into communism, people just don't understand. The dark occultists control both sides, and then they float both sides out to the public, and they see which is more popular, and then they run with that which is easier to sell to the public. That's all that's happening here. That's why we're turning into a communist nation instead of a national socialist one. What do you think? They don't all end up at the same place? They have very similar methods. They all take you to the same place. They just start with a little bit different premise and have a slightly different methodologies. As a matter of fact, most of their methodologies are very similar and not dissimilar. And they all take you to the same totalitarian prison. It doesn't make a difference what flavor the slavery has, folks. It's still slavery. All right? So this show, this whole podcast series has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with siding with Democrats, with siding with Republicans. This is why when people hear me say I'm anti-communist, oh, I must be a right-winger. When people hear me say I'm anti-police, oh, I must be a left-winger. No, it's you who doesn't know what the fuck you're talking about. Okay? You're still in mind control. You're still under mind control. You're still involved in a cult. In a cult. And I'm not going to say it nicely anymore to people. Okay? I'm going to try to back it up and take it down a notch and just explain it. But let me tell you something right now, folks. you're not going to tell me what my worldview and understanding is. Quite frankly, you don't fucking know me and you don't know what I know. Okay? And I think I'll leave it at that and try not to keep really being vicious about that. But folks, I'm tired of hearing it. I'm tired of singing it. You know, I try not to play into the drama, but I'm going to state it publicly. Nobody's going to tell me what I understand about this. And guess what? You're not going to tell me you're right when you're fucking wrong. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about if you still side with the left or the right. If you don't understand this is about consciousness and it's manipulation and drawing people into cult beliefs, none of which are true. Zero of which are true in point of fact reality. You're not going to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about in this regard, because I absolutely do. It is you who are mentally flawed. It is you who have not taken enough information into yourself and done enough work upon yourself internally. So I'm not going to let some know-nothing little punk boy or girl who hasn't grown up psychologically or spiritually tell me as a psychological adept that I don't know what I'm talking about. And no other adult should. And guess what? The problem is people don't get up in other people's face enough. No, it's not. We shouldn't be just, oh, tender and oh, baby, let me give you the little spoon feed of. No, I'm not doing that. You know why? I'm the adult in the room. That's why. A child isn't going to dictate to the adult. You got that? A child's not going to dictate to the adult. Yeah, I'm not going to allow it. You're not going to do that to this one. You might get away with it to other people, but you ain't doing it to this one. All right? You don't know what I've gone through. You don't know what I've studied. You don't know what I know. You don't know how obsessively I've studied it to know it. And you're just wrong if you think otherwise. So let's get it cleared up once and for all, dumb fucks out there. Okay? This isn't a political show. This is a show about consciousness and the occult and mind control and natural law and what is happening on this planet regarding human freedom versus human slavery. And politics has nothing to do with it. It's a fucking cult, and it always has been and always will be. So let's clear that up once and for all. Okay? When people ask me why I'm not going to wear a mask, you're not putting a mask on my fucking face or body. It ain't happening. You'll face physical repercussions if you try. I own my body. I'm not your fucking slave. The end. How about that? Try to do it and see what happens. You won't like the result. That's called self-ownership and the deep understanding of sovereignty as an individual. Why I'm not wearing a mask? You don't need to know anything except I don't join cults or participate in their fucking rituals. That's it. That time period is long past me, ladies and gentlemen. That's how I learned what I know, quite frankly, is that I was in the cult that runs the world. I was in the cult that owns everybody in the world, or claims that they do. And guess what? They actually do, because of how much control over their own minds people have given them. So I learned my lesson a long time ago. I don't join cults, and I don't participate in their rituals. All right? Weak-minded people still do that. And as I said last week, politics is the belief in the shadows on the walls of Plato's cave. Now, I want to say, somebody made this meme on social media. I found it in someone's feed on Facebook. I do not know the actual creator of the meme, but I asked for someone to make it. A few people made different variations. This is the one I liked the most, so I figured I'd feature it this week. I apologize, I do not have the author's name. If you want to send an email to me who made this, I'll credit you on the show. But this is it. This is I said I should make a shirt of this, right? This would make a cool shirt. But guess what? 99.9% of the human population wouldn't understand it because they're unread, pretty much philosophically illiterate fools. And they don't even know what Plato's cave means. They don't even understand what that is. See, this is an allegory that the philosopher Plato was teaching people in ancient Greece. He was saying reality is like people who are living in a cave and shadows are being projected on the wall of the cave from a light source and puppet figures that are behind a wall behind them. by other people who are like puppet masters. And they're making these projections on the wall, and people are sitting there watching the projections. This was like an early video camera, actually a video projector, I should say. Plato was envisioning the modern video projector, actually, working like an overhead projector. And he was saying they believe that the shadows are the real things. And if you tell them that they're not real and they're just illusions, a trick of light and shadow, they'll get angry at you and want to kill you for trying to dissuade them from the belief in their illusion as reality. They don't want to come out of that illusion. They want to believe it. You tell them, hey, you're in a cave that you've never left. And all of this is fake. All of this is just designed to keep you there looking at the movie, looking at the show. They'll want to kill you for saying there's an outside. Hey, I could take you through the tunnel to the mouth of the cave and show you the outside world and show you that all of this is illusion. And you know what they'll say? They won't thank you. They'll say, I'm going to kill you now. That's how tightly they are totally psychologically intertwined with the illusion. The illusion is their identity. It's their very identity. This is what it means to come out of mind control, ladies and gentlemen. This is what it means to realize that politics is an illusion and a cult. I'm sick of hearing from people who are involved in the illusion and are members of the cult, brainwashed members of the cult, that I'm telling them something that isn't true, that they're in a cult. You're not going to dictate my worldview in reality. I've said this a million times now since I've come back from hiatus, and I'm going to say it a million more. You aren't going to dictate my worldview. You're not going to tell me what I know. And guess what? You are wrong. I'm not going to dictate your worldview either, but I'm not going to acknowledge that you are correct, because you are not. You are wrong. And you are the one who needs to do work to come out of the illusion. I have it clearly figured out. I have it clearly understood and correctly understood. You do not. And guess what? This is what people have to start saying to people. There is an objective truth regarding it. There is an objective truth regarding what is moral and what is not moral. There is an objective truth regarding whether politics is true or an illusion. There is an objective truth regarding whether government is slavery or not. There is an objective truth regarding whether police have the right to even morally exist as an institution or not. It is not a matter of opinion. None of this is my opinion. I am presenting objective moral truths here on what on earth is happening. I am not stating my opinion about any of it. I'll tell you when it's my opinion. When I like one type of blender more than another to process my food and make smoothies in the morning, that's an opinion. If I like one computer platform over another, that's an opinion. When it comes to what actions are harmful and initiate harm to another sentient being, it's not an opinion. It's objective in nature, in point of fact, natural reality. The same is concerned when it comes to the morality of whether police have the right to exist or not, whether government has the right to exist or not. It's not a matter of opinion. This is what solipsism tells people is perfectly fine to believe. Oh, it's all a matter of opinion and perception. No, that's solipsistic bullshit, and it's a religion. And if you believe it, you're a member of a cult. The whole idea of where this virus came from, what its nature is, what its infectivity is, whether masks help. It's not a matter of opinion. There's a truth regarding it. And most people have it all ass backwards and don't know anything about what they're talking about. And you're not going to dictate your worldview or tell me that what you consider science is the arbiter of truth, because you're missing huge puzzle pieces and huge swaths of information that you don't have gathered, you don't have processed and understood, and you're certainly not acting upon. It is you who are ignorant, not me. I've done that homework, and I know what the truth regarding it is, and you do not. And you will not dictate my worldview or tell me what I must accept as true. You're not the fucking arbiter of truth, and neither is the science you worship. And guess what? People want to keep pressing with that, it's going to become physical. And you'll find out what'll happen. And I think that's what everybody's attitude should be. Everybody's attitude should say, you're not going to dictate a fucking worldview to me, or there'll be physical consequences. You want to play those games? Watch what happens. And I'm telling you, this is where our society is headed, folks, and it's not going to be pretty, and it's because people haven't done their own study and homework regarding true philosophy, and they haven't done any internal work upon themselves. And most of all, ones doing those things, they're cowards, they're chicken shit cowards, and they haven't taught it publicly without fear. They just said, oh, it's great that I know this. Screw everybody else. I'm not teaching it to other people. Let somebody else do that. You're one of the sources of the problem. Not just the ignorance of other people, your cowardice and not teaching it to other people. If you feel you have a handle on it, not teaching it to others is doing as much damage as the people who believe all the nonsense and all the cult beliefs that are out there. You're doing just as much damage to society. Get as offended as you like. I really couldn't give a damn. I'm here not to not offend anybody. I'm here to tell you the harsh truth about what's going on in this reality so that it can be solved. And once again, one of the things I do here is I present the philosophy that needs to be understood from a perspective of first principles. First principles have to come first. People have suggested pragmatic approaches to the protection of a society. That comes secondary. We can talk about all of that. That's a great thing. You should put that out there to other people. So you say, hey, there's other ways of dealing with this pragmatically. But you know what? You do that second. You got to understand the philosophy of why doing it the way we are doing it now is immoral first. Then you could jump to the pragmatic and say, how can we address these issues from a pragmatic 3D perspective? And maybe we could do that next week. Maybe we could do a whole call-in show where we talk about what's a pragmatic approach to solving these issues. First of all, the main pragmatic approach to solving it is what I talked about last week, proper moral education. Nobody wants to hear that that's the solution. Forget about implementing all kinds of control measures in your neighborhood first. How about trying to teach people proper morality? How about setting up natural law seminars in your local area? You know, in a local community center and teaching people true natural law principles. There's a pragmatic approach. How many are doing that? You know how many are doing that? That's how many. That's just an exact figure. I calculated that for a long time. I ran that through a lot of computer simulations and transmutations before I got that result. But that's an exact figure right there. That's how many people, ratio-wise of population, are actually teaching people true morality. It's a joke. It's a joke, and our masters are laughing at us with a big fat fucking belly laugh at the joke that we are. And nobody wants to hear that. They want to say, oh, Mark, you're so negative. No, I know the exact dynamic that's taking place of how many people really understand the causal factors, and it's a piss in a pot. Okay? It's less than that. And that's why people say, what do you really think's happening? Are we winning, or are people waking up? They're waking up on a very cursory level because of the control. Do they understand the causal factors yet? Not a goddamn bit. Do they understand the solutions? Not a goddamn bit. Even the people who say they understand the causal factors, when you tell them what the solutions are, they don't want to hear that the solutions are taking personal responsibility. They don't want to hear that the solutions are educating people morally, one-on-one, and on a wide scale, in their community and then widely on the internet. They don't want to do that. They want to hear a patchwork solution. Oh, we're going to put this kind of force in place to try to protect our neighborhoods. You know, no, that's not ultimately the solution. The solution is proper moral education, and you have to get involved in that work. No, the people out there, they don't want to do that because that's your time. That's your investment of resources. That's your blood, sweat, and tears. No, you just want an easy patchwork solution rattled off to you in 5 seconds. You don't want to hear the hard work. You're the joke. You're the joke. Not what I'm doing. I'm presenting real solutions and have since day one. This whole podcast is a solution, is the solution. If you're too hard-headed and fucking ego-driven to recognize that, that's not my fault or problem, asshole. Okay? And I'm just going to say it to you like that. You don't know what you're fucking talking about. I do. All right? Just like that. You want to butt egos? Let's butt egos and let's see who wins. Okay? I won't be dictated to a know-nothing like that. You want to know what the world really is instead of just the cult of politics? Here's what it really is. It's a satanic death cult that's going to devour everybody, and there's only a few people exposing the satanic death cult. Look, I don't know who made this one either, but I'll tell you what, this is the exact world we're living in. This is exactly what it is. This is exactly what's taking place. This could be the one and only slide for what on earth is happening necessary ever. Okay? This is the exact true view of the world that is actually occurring. All right? Beautiful slide, great graphics, really well done, absolutely true. So I wanted to throw that in there, although I also do not know who made this one. But that is a phenomenal understanding of our current world, whoever made it. So let's do some more review of the psychological profile of all police, whether they are broken down into the category of order followers or true psychopaths. So here's the order followers on the left. Yes, sir. I'll do anything you command. We don't make the laws. We just enforce them. We're just doing our job. We're just following orders. We're just an obedient little fucking Nazi. We're just an obedient little fucking communist. It's all the same thing. It's all the same difference. Oppo-sames, as David Icke likes to call them. You know? Same difference between the left wing, totalitarianism, and right wing. It doesn't make a difference. And there's another thing. If you don't understand that there's really no ultimate difference between where that takes us as a species and as a society, you are wrong. No, the left and right wing are ultimately the same wings of a bird of prey who's reaching down with its talons and scooping up humanity, taking it to its nest to devour them. And again, if you don't understand that, you're still under fucking mind control. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. Go back, watch the whole series from podcast number 1 and learn all the methods of mind control because you're probably under many of them. Particularly your diet. You probably don't filter your water. You're drinking poison fucking tap water. You probably don't eat good food. You think you could eat whatever you want and it won't fuck your brain up. And you're wrong. You're wrong. Okay? It probably has a lot to do with how you're toxifying your ability of your system, of your central nervous system and your body to take in information and process it properly. You're fucking that whole process up, boy. You're fucking that whole process up, girl. Okay? And that's the problem. Most people start with an unhealthy body that leads to a totally unhealthy psychological state. One of the biggest ways that order followers do this is through the adrenal rush that they live for, which totally screws up the brain, both brain hemispheres. Takes us out of the neocortical brain and all the human functions that makes possible and roots people into the R complex of the brain, the reptilian brain. So here are the characteristics of these two types of police. The order followers have an extreme lack of holistic intelligence, regardless of their intellect quotient. They attempt to abdicate their own personal responsibility to discover objective morality, or in other words, which actions are moral and which actions are immoral. In other words, they don't engage conscience. That is the definition of what an order follower does. They abdicate conscience, which is the knowledge of the difference between right and wrong behavior, and the exercise of conscience, I should say, is what they're abdicating because they don't have the knowledge that conscience comprises, the difference, the objective difference between moral and immoral behavior. They want to be told by others what to do, by their superiors. You know, they perceive others as their superiors, and mommy and daddy just tell me what to do. My surrogate parents, because my actual parents were pieces of garbage trash that didn't raise me properly from a moral perspective or weren't there for me. They didn't pay enough attention to me. They didn't do the work as parents that they need to do to properly raise me in a moral capacity. And therefore, my surrogate parents, government, mommy and daddy, regardless of what party it happens to be, mommy Democrat Party or mommy, Liberal Party, is going to raise me and tell me what I should do, or daddy Republican/conservative party is going to tell me what to do. You know, you're still a child who never grew up psychologically. You're still a child who never grew up mentally, emotionally, spiritually. All of these people are psychological infants. And that is what they are attempting to do. Abdicate responsibility for their own behaviors to perceived superiors. They desire to please their so-called superiors as psychological proxy parents. They have no connection whatsoever to any true personal power or true personal creativity in their lives, which is where true power comes from. They have multiple, deep-seated psychological inferiority complexes, both real and perceived or imagined. They attempt to compensate for their inferiority complexes by controlling others and conducting violence upon others. And this is one of the reasons why 40% of male police are known to beat their wives. They are known to conduct domestic violence upon their own spouses. That's the kind of pieces of work that they are. It's the kind of pieces of trash they are. You're a real big man. Trash. Beating a woman that's less physically powerful than you. You think you're a real big guy because you have all these inferiority complexes and you fucking hate yourself. And so you want to take it out on a weaker woman. Your women who you beat ought to take out a 9mm hollow point and clap you out, son. That's what those women ought to do for you beating them and abusing them. Every one of them would have the right to do it, and they'd be praised as people taking trash out of the world, as far as I'm concerned. First of all, I think that's what women who are abused, raped, anything like that, physically, that's how they should answer it. That's the right of self-defense. That's why people should be trained in the use of firearms and be willing to use them when their rights are being taken away or they're being physically harmed or abused. No one has the right to do that, least of all pigs out there who are abusing their wives. You're trash who was raised by trash. And now we have the psychopaths on the other side. They're even really bigger pieces of work. Total aggressive and callous behavior, complete absence of conscience and empathy, willing to engage in immoral criminal conduct to intentionally violate the inherent rights of other human beings, willing to use intimidation and violence to dominate and control others, have a complete absence of any sense of guilt or remorse for the harm their actions cause to others. They deny, abdicate, and rationalize their own immoral behavior. In other words, they take no personal responsibility for the harm that their actions cause. They're largely pathological liars or very skilled liars, very skilled at faking normal human emotions, very skilled or adept at manipulating other people, and believe that they will never be brought to justice for their immoral and criminal actions. We looked last week at the psychological profile of all police supporters. They break down into the two psychological categories of the bootlickers and the cowards. We looked at their psychological characteristics. Here's what they look like. Oh yeah, we back the blue. No, you back the violence and death cult. That's what the police are. They are the subordinate violence and death cult run by the true priest class, dark occult violence and death cult. That's who you back. Let's say it without euphemisms. You back a satanic death cult. That's who anybody who supports the police is backing and supporting. You back a satanic death cult. And you know what, folks? Hardly anybody in the world is saying it like that. I don't tune into podcasts where they say it like that. I don't tune into video documentaries where they say it like that. You only get that type of total removal of euphemisms in a completely plain way here on What on Earth is Happening. Very few places, if any, talk about it like that. And then the cowards are the ones they're afraid of their own shadows. Talk about not wanting personal responsibility. These people wouldn't act if they were actively being put through a large meat grinder. They'd be saying, oh, it's necessary for the protection of our society. If I got to go in the meat grinder feet first, so be it. The bootlickers revel in the completely erroneous religious cult belief that authority is morally legitimate when it is in fact based entirely upon coercion and violence. They are possessed by the ego-hardened religious cult belief that some people can magically obtain rights that others do not possess. They believe in this thing called the delegation of rights that don't exist for the individual, We're going to talk about that today. They possess a distorted and incorrect sense of justice regarding the punishment of criminals or evildoers. They childishly attempt to abdicate their own personal responsibility to others for self-defense. And that can never be done in nature. That can only be claimed to be done. No one can actually abdicate their own personal responsibility. I hear people on social media going, oh, this is the only thing I disagree with Passio on. We need police because could we actually just act as our own defense? Yes. First of all, you can. You are just a child who doesn't want to do it. Secondly, there are other pragmatic approaches to utilizing the members of the community as individuals to do it. We could talk about those pragmatic approaches. That does not absolve you of the personal responsibility of your own self-defense first and foremost. So you can look at it this way. Does a pregnant wife have the responsibility to physically defend her own child? Yes. It does not fall even alone on the husband. It does not fall on anyone outside of herself. First and foremost, a pregnant wife should, even though she may not be able to do that physically against a stronger adversary, she should be able to do that with firearms. So absolutely, that is the first and foremost responsibility of the individual. Even if you're in such a very precarious situation as having the task of defending a very small child from physical harm, including yourself as a physically structured, weaker person from an anatomical point of view. You know, let's face it, women do not have the muscular strength of most men. That's just an anatomical fact of the way the female body is structured. Does that absolve the woman of her personal responsibility to defend herself? No, it does not. First and foremost, you would still have to have the responsibility of defending yourself. And so when you understand those weaknesses and limitations, you go to the equalizer, which is the firearm. Then you could talk with others about strategies as individuals to help with that defense from a pragmatic standpoint. But it does not absolve you first and foremost from understanding the self-defense principle from a first principle perspective and actually being equipped properly to defend your own body. So we'll talk about that more. Let's keep going through these as a review. So they attempted abdicate their personal responsibility for self-defense to others. Bad premise. It's a bad axiomatic premise. It's a false axiomatic premise on its face that can never be done, because it cannot in nature. You can only claim you're doing it, and that makes you an ignorant, irresponsible child as a being. So all the people out there who say, I agree with Passio on everything except the police thing, we need them. You're an ignorant, irresponsible child. Psychologically, you don't know what the truth is regarding it, and you haven't studied it deeply enough from a perspective of first principles, and you are incorrect, you are wrong, and you are irresponsible. And that's not my opinion, that's the fact of the matter, boy. That's the fact of the matter, girl. Period. Just because you don't understand that doesn't make it untrue. You're ignorant and you don't understand it. That's not my problem. That's your problem. It's still true, nonetheless, and you're still wrong. Got it? Get it? Good. The reason that these people think this shit is because they are not at a spiritually awakened level of consciousness. You haven't awakened. You're at a false level of awakening. You think you're awakened, but you're not. Go back and watch Streetwise Spirituality. Go back and watch the Natural Law Seminar. Go back and watch all the podcasts multiple times if you have to. But you're not awake. You haven't taken in enough information. You think you have, but you haven't. You think you're awake, but you're not. You think you have all you need to know, and you've taken it in and understood it, and you haven't done that process. You only think you've done it, but you haven't done it. And I'm not going to sugar spoon feed people who know nothing and think they know. You're the one who's wrong. You're the one who has incomplete knowledge. Fill the gaps in your knowledge and work on yourself and become spiritually awakened. Not just awakened from a political/financial point of view. If you think that's all there is, and if you think the physical is all there is, and you don't understand awakening in consciousness and spiritually, you're not awake. You are under a false impression of what awakening is, and you're at a false level of being awake, and you're not totally awake. You're halfway there at best, probably a quarter or a tenth of the way there in what you know. You haven't done the work of coming completely online. You're only halfway there. You're in the process of waking up. Don't confuse the process of waking up with being completely awake. You're not. So they're not at that spiritually awakened level of consciousness because they still do not understand and realize fully that any and all government is slavery. That's part of one of the tenets of true awakening. Watch my Streetwise Spirituality seminar, all 20 points of what I consider true awakening, which are only the 20 most important points. There's more than that. Those are the 20 most important points of what it means to truly be awake as a spiritual being. Watch it again. Watch it 10 times if you have to. Hammer it through your skull. You're thick-headed. You're in ego. You're in ego. You're in ego. You're in ego. You haven't awoken yet. You're in ego. The ego has you. It owns you. Get fully awakened. The ego still has you. If you think the police are necessary and have any right to exist, the ego still has you. If you think government is necessary and has any moral legitimacy to exist, the ego still has you. The cult still has you. You're still under mind control. You're not awake. You haven't done the necessary work upon yourself. You haven't taken in the necessary prerequisite knowledge into yourself, filtered it properly, understood it properly, applied it properly in your life. You haven't done any of those things. And you think you know. You don't know shit, scum. Shit's what you know. You know balls, exactly. Okay? You know nothing. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you. I'm going to tell you the absolute truth because there's no more time. We're out of fucking time. If you didn't realize 2020 is tick-tock out of time on the big fucking clock, you don't know what's going on. No more time to say it nicely. The cowards. Let's look at their psychological profile as a review. Totally self-loathing and self-hating. No self-respect whatsoever. That's what all cowardice is. All inaction, not acting, comes from cowardice. Whether you're not acting on things you need to implement internally or what you need to do in the physical world. They have a completely absent or distorted sense of self-worth. They're taught to be afraid of everything that they don't understand. This is called learned helplessness. They're often even physically weak in addition to being mentally, emotionally, and spiritually weak. They don't want the personal responsibility of their own self-defense, even though this right and responsibility can never truly be abdicated. You can only make the claim that you're abdicating that to others, but it cannot actually be truly abdicated in the realm of nature. They always want someone else to keep them safe and or bail them out or protect them in a dangerous or uncomfortable situation. As we're going to talk about here today, that actually cannot be done. They almost always psychologically suffer from parental abandonment issues. Mommy and daddy wasn't there or didn't give them enough attention or nurturing in many ways. And even if they are knowledgeable from a perspective of pure knowledge, they will never act upon that knowledge. They will never do the right thing with what they know. They will never actually implement wisdom. Even if they have knowledge and understanding, they are failures in the third step of the trivium process. Therefore, they have not truly mastered themselves. You could know everything there is to know, and you could understand it with perfect clarity. But if you do not put it into the world in right action, you have failed spiritually. You have not mastered what it means to actually do the great work. You cannot be considered a master or an adept in that regard. And I'm not talking about a master from a perspective of owning anybody. I'm talking about self-mastery. And that doesn't mean perfection. That means that you have a tremendous skill set under your belt in that regard of knowing what to do with the information that you have come to correctly understand. That's why it's called wisdom. It's doing the right thing with what you have come to understand with all the information that you have amassed and now have as knowledge. So that's a brief review. Now, last week I also talked about, I'm just going to continue this brief review from last week. We also talked about the sheer ridiculousness and absurdity of believing that there is any such thing or ever has been any such thing as a quote unquote good cop. Once again, this does not mean that there is no such thing as a cop who is capable of performing good behaviors, nor does it mean they cannot be good parents to their children. It does not mean that they cannot be a good spouse to their wives or husbands, okay? That is not what I'm talking about as good, capital G. Doing good things does not mean you're a good person. A person who's a high-level dark occultist can become a member of a charity and ostensibly, claim I'm a charitable individual. Look at how much I'm donating out of the billions that I make. I donate a couple $100 million to these charities to make it look like I'm a good person, but really behind the scenes, I'm an evil eugenicist. Doing a good behavior in the world does not make you a good person. When I'm saying, put the slide back up, when I'm saying good here, wrapped in quotes, I'm talking about what does it actually mean to be a truly good being? Capital G good. There is no such thing as capital G good when it comes to police, because you're engaged in an institution that on its face, from its very foundations, means that you are engaging in immoral and criminal behavior. Whether you think so or not, or whether anybody else thinks so or not, it will never make that statement untrue. The very institution of policing is slavery on its face, whether you understand that or not. That's objectively, eternally true, the end for all times and places. Nothing anybody says can make that a false statement. If you don't accept it as the truth, you don't understand and you are wrong. That's all it comes down to. And your ego is in the way of understanding the truth of the matter. Your ego is in the way of understanding the truth of this matter. Your ego is in the way of understanding the truth of this matter from a philosophical, spiritual, and moral standpoint. Your taking in of knowledge and information and applying it is incomplete or broken in some form or fashion. You haven't done the work correctly or properly. And that is not my fault. That's not my fault as a teacher because I've taught it perfectly clearly. That's your fault and problem. Your fault and problem. You are to blame because your ego is too fucking hardened. And you think you're right and you can't say the magic words that every mystery tradition told people were the three biggest magic words. You want the big incantation of all time. You want the biggest summoning of all time of a different energy that comes upon the being to make them transformed and go through a transformation of the spirit. The biggest incantation / spiritual invocation of all time in any magical tradition that has ever existed is, I was wrong. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. You've just been given one of the occult secret of secrets, along with how natural law operates. You want to say the biggest incantation and biggest invocation of calling down a different form of energy that can never be called into the body, into the mind, into the soul. Fall in love with the phrase, I was wrong. And you know how many times I've said it? Far more seconds than I've ever put into working in what on earth is happening. I've said I was wrong that many times. Okay? And guess what, folks? This is why we live in a satanic culture and society, because people cannot admit the simple thing that they have been duped about certain things. They have latched onto a false belief system and that they were wrong regarding what they have previously taken in regarding information, and it has formed a calcified belief in their psyche. And they cannot rid themselves of that absolute malware in the brain. This is malware or a virus of the mind. And your psychic self-defense or your antivirus software is faulty. The antivirus software you need to install and run is called I was wrong about this. I didn't have the necessary information to process this and come to an accurate conclusion from foundational first principles. See, people who don't understand this truth can't argue from first principles. They try to argue from a pragmatic point of view of utilitarianism. Well, utilitarianism isn't moral principles. You could justify anything according to utilitarian principles. I need to run this railroad through this neighborhood, and these two people, their homes are in the way, and they aren't going to sell or move, so I'm just going to bulldoze them with them in it and kill them. Well, that's utilitarian. You're going to get done what you want to get done, but does it make it moral? Utilitarianism has nothing to do with first principles morally. That's why they're called moral first principles. They have to come before everything else. And if you don't understand the statement that there cannot ever be a good cop, you do not understand moral first principles from a foundational point of view. Your thinking is flawed. You have to say, I was wrong. I'll tell you you were wrong, but I can't make you accept that you are wrong. It is the truth that you are wrong. It is not my opinion that you are wrong. That is not my opinion or belief. It is the fact of the matter that you are wrong according to eternal, objectively true first principles that are not beliefs, that are laws in nature. You, however, have your ego so calcified and hardened that it is in the way of your reception of first moral principles. That is the eternal truth of the matter. I really have never heard anybody explain it like that. To my knowledge, I'm the only one who explains it like this in the world. So let's look at a brief review with some different slides of this truth, this eternal truth. This is not my opinion. These are eternal truths that I'm going to put up here. The eternal truth regarding the police, okay? They are not and cannot protect anyone. They're not protecting anyone right now. The police cannot protect anyone. Police are not there when an act of violence is about to take place. No one is closer to your body than you are. You are inhabiting your body with your consciousness, so you are one with it. The people in this room with me right now, two other people are sitting in the very room where I am at right now. They are incapable of protecting me. Only I can protect myself, even though there's two other people in here with me. They might assist in my self-defense, but they cannot provide for it. Because no one is closer to me than me. The police cannot protect anybody from a purely 3D, utilitarian, pragmatic point of view. You are the first in your line of defense, physically, against anything or anyone. If you don't understand that, you don't even understand the way the laws of physics operate, let alone first principles of morality. Secondly, the police don't protect anyone. It is not their job description. You can look it up. The Supreme Court has roundly ruled and decided, and there are several precedents, even in the Supreme Court of the United States and in almost every other country in the world, the police do not have a duty or responsibility to protect anyone. They are there to enforce code, statutes and code, and they do that by showing up once they have a reasonable suspicion or a definitive understanding that law code in any particular jurisdiction has been violated or broken, which is not breaking natural law, it's breaking the law of man. And then they show up after the fact to clean up the mess, to then do some form of punishment to the person who broke that statute or code. They do not sit there going, this person is in danger of possibly having their rights violated. Let me watch over them and protect them. That is not what police do. They show up after the fact of violence has been committed, and then they try to capture the committer of that violent behavior or the breaking of their code, which they are charged to enforce, and then they take the person and bring them before some type of a judge, magistrate, or court system after the fact. So police right now aren't in the business of providing personal protection for anyone. If you believe or say, who's going to protect us? Oh, we do away with the police. How are we going to get any protection? Where's my vomit puppet when I need it? I'm not going to trot him out this week. Okay? But I'll do the same absolutely, completely, brain burnt voice. Okay? who's going to protect me when, if the police are abolished? Like, you talk like you have shit drooling out your mouth. Okay? This is how dumb you sound. This is how dumb people sound. And it's sad. It really is sad that people think this in the 21st century. This deep into the 21st century. That they actually believe police care about them and want to protect them. You are a naive, silly-minded, shit-for-brains child. And again, I say that I'm going to reel it back, but in all honesty, it's so difficult because of how totally bullheaded people are. Why? What's wrong with you? I want to know, you know what the Rosicrucian question is to ask? What they teach people when they see this much of a destroyed soul and mind? What ails you? What made you this fucking broken as a being? Why are you so broken? What is the trauma that is going on in your mind and heart? What is wrong with you? Do you understand you're sick? Do you understand you have deep-seated psychological and spiritual ailments in your heart, in your very heart, in the core of your heart, in the core of your soul? You're sick. You're sick at the core of your soul. What ails you, brother? What ails you, sister? It's very hard to reel it back and actually try to go there into the actual realm of heart and spirit because of how much damage your way of thinking and your false belief has done in the world. You're sick. You're ill. You're spiritually ill more than anything else. You're mentally ill. It's a mental illness. But at the very core foundation, it's sickness of the heart. You have a soul sickness. You have a spiritual illness. Because you're heartbroken. Some form of trauma damaged your heart from a soul point of view. Because that's the seat of the soul, is the heart, not the mind, not the brain. And people who go, oh, this isn't all about the mind. It's absolutely about the mind and psychic shielding and self-defense of the mind so you don't fall prey to mind control. But ultimately, you have to get at the heart. That's why even just intellectual intelligence of this is not going to get it done. You have to have heart-based intelligence. That's spiritual intelligence. So my question to the people who don't get these dynamics is what ails you at the level of the heart, at the level of the soul? What trauma did you undergo that broke you at the heart level, at the spirit level, or at the level that forces your false religious belief into a belief that there is no such thing as spirit, that the material is all there is? This is a soul sickness. Radical materialism is a soul illness. It's an illness of spirit. So the question that I have to keep putting out there and make it a mantra on What on Earth is Happening is what ails you? What is going on to traumatize you at a level of soul? That maybe will help me realize this is where we got to get to, and I need to take my attack level down a little bit. But guess what, folks? It's still going to be there because you're not taking my freedom without physical repercussions. And let me tell you something. You will encounter the anger of 10,000 legions of macro beings. 10,000 legions of archangels I will fight with. You won't encounter a human being. You'll encounter a supra-hyper-human in the way I will fight for my freedom. I'll fight like 1,000 other men when the time comes. So will many others. Not enough, but many of them will. We'll make up for the lack of numbers with the way we will physically fight. And trust me, you will encounter something you will not even imagine is human. The police don't protect anyone because they actually can't. You have a flawed definition and axiomatic definition from the core level of what protection means. You don't even understand the word of what it means to protect. Police do not prevent anything from happening. They don't even deter what might happen. Everybody still has free will, and anybody can act violently at any given time. You know, there is nothing preventing somebody in this room from picking up one of the firearms that are actively in this room and loaded, from killing any of the other individuals in this room for no reason, right where I'm sitting. Nothing prevents that. No one is protected from that right now unless they have their own firearm on them. And then they'd have to be faster with it. So just think about that. If anybody in the room where I'm sitting right now, me or one of my producer or backup producers sitting here right now, wanted to do any form of extreme violence, any of us could do it to each other. Because there's multiple loaded firearms in here. Right? So, what's preventing that? Is anything protecting us from that? No, nothing. We are entrusting that no one will do that. But that doesn't provide protection. The police aren't going to stop that from happening if one of us makes the free will choice. It may be a bad free will choice to do it because of repercussions that would happen, but that's not preventing it from happening. Nothing prevents violence like that from happening. Police only show up after the fact. Why don't people understand this? It's a very simple concept. It's not that difficult. They don't protect anyone. They never will protect anyone. This institution cannot, does not, and never will protect anyone. Ever. It's a false axiomatic belief that they do or even can. And if you don't understand that, I'm sorry that you're just wrong and this is just the eternal truth. Your mind is somehow either broken and or calcified in such a way that you are hardened into a cult belief system. That's it. The police only exist to coerce human beings and their behavior into obedience to the decrees of the occult ruling class. That is the job of police. It is not to care about, protect, or provide for your protection in any way, or provide any kind of service to you. They don't serve, they don't protect. It's a myth. It's a false myth. It's a false cult belief. They exist to coerce human beings and human behavior into obedience to the decrees of the occult ruling class. That is their actual function. Serving and protection is their ostensible function, which is a lie. Their actual function is they are serving the occult ruling class who considers themselves the gods who writes the law of any given society, and that those decrees are to be enforced by a strong-arm mafia enforcer class known as the police. And that is what all policing is, anywhere in the world. Police exist to conduct violence upon human beings who disobey the decrees of the ruling class. That is all they are there to do. That is all they ever have been there to do. That is all they ever will be there to do. If you don't understand that, that is your problem. This is an eternal truth and not a matter of perspective or opinion, and never will be. This is not opinion. These statements on this card, on this slide, are not opinions. They are eternal, unwavering truths in nature. For all time and places, the end. Nothing you say or do will ever make them untrue. And if you think they are, you're just wrong, and your ego is in the way, and you haven't studied it enough from a perspective of first principles, and you haven't decalcified your own ego by doing internal shadow work upon yourself enough. And if you think anything other than what was laid down on that slide, you're still not awake. You're at a false level of awakening, appearing as awakening. And you don't really know what true awakening is, and you're certainly not at that level of consciousness. And I'm the one who will tell you. Since most other people won't tell you that, I will. And I won't apologize for it. Next slide. I took the time last week to go through some of these, but I was going too fast, and this section is too important to speed up over. So I'm going to go through it nice and slow this week, and we may need a third week to get through the material I want to talk about and cover. If so, so be it. This section is called The Absolute foundational, first principle based truth regarding why all police forces on earth should and must be abolished, not reformed, but done away with and replaced with nothing else. You know, I'm going to ask for another piece of art. Maybe I'll have my graphic artist who has come on board in-house make this for me this week, or maybe even tomorrow. I need a slide of someone with cancer that just is a post-op, sitting in a hospital, and just had cancer surgery to remove a big chunk of lung cancer that they had in their lungs. And their friends visiting them and says, so what kind of cancer did you decide on to replace your lung cancer, Jim? That's how asinine and stupid someone sounds when they say, well, we could get rid of the current form of policing that we have, but what are we going to reform it with? What are we going to replace it with? Well, what do you replace lung cancer with when you cut it out of the body? What kind of cancer do you replace lung cancer with when you have surgery to cut lung cancer out of the body because it has spread over the majority of the lungs and only surgery is going to reverse it? You cut that cancer out, what do you replace it with? How asinine of a question is that? What do you replace? What kind of cancer do you replace your existing cancer with? I mean, anybody asking that sounds like a complete fool, and they are. So when people go, well, what are you going to replace the police force with once you get rid of it? We can't completely abolish it and replace it with nothing. So what are you going to replace it with? What kind of cancer are you going to replace that cancer you're reforming or replacing with? That's how dumb you sound. Just like a cancer, which the police are, you don't replace it with anything when you cut it out of an infected body. You get rid of it. You throw it in the trash can where it belongs because it's garbage to begin with, and you say good riddance to bad rubbish. And you don't replace it with anything. You know what the answer, what you replace it is? Correct moral and philosophical understanding. Correct moral and philosophical understanding from an educational point of view. So let's look at these dynamics. There's 5 of these. I should say there's 5 absolute foundational first principle truths regarding why all police forces must be abolished. So in these slides, I've changed it slightly to say these are 5 eternal truths regarding why all police forces should and must be abolished. They are not opinions. They are not perspectives. They are not my perspective. They are the total, complete, absolute, unwavering truth in nature that can only ever be understood or someone cannot understand. Again, the philosopher Kierkegaard once said there are only 2 ways that any member of humanity, any human being is ever fooled. They accept that which is not true, and they refuse to accept that which is true. That's it. It's as simple as that, folks. Everything else is ancillary to that. All problems in the world are caused by the acceptance of untruths that harden into calcified belief systems and the refusal to accept truth. This is why in the Kabbalistic tradition, I've talked about some occult traditions. I think we need refreshers on occult traditions at some point in the future as well. In the Kabbalistic tradition, the true positive Kabbalistic tradition, again, every occult tradition has its polar opposite. There is a light occult tradition and a dark occult tradition. The occult is simply knowledge of how the laws of nature and the human psyche function and operate, and how we are receiving the experience collectively as humanity, as a species, that we are receiving as how our behaviors interoperate with those laws. So the Kabbalistic tradition has a concept of receiving, reception. That's what the word Kabbalah actually means in the ancient Hebrew. The word Kabbalah means to correctly receive. Now, let me say that again. A lot of people don't know this, or they have the translation incorrect. In the ancient Hebrew, the word Kabbalah, and as an occult tradition, what the Kabbalah does to actually teach is proper reception, correct reception of natural law. It teaches how natural law actually functions, and it teaches how you get the ego out of the way through work upon yourself to properly receive the teachings of natural law. See, just the teachings being out there into the public, which they certainly are, is not the answer or solution. The problem is most people are completely inadequate and ill-equipped to receive these teachings. This is why the majority of people cannot understand what I have said here, or what on earth is happening, and or reject these eternal truths that I am speaking. It is not a matter of perception or opinion. There is one truth regarding this. One objective, eternal truth for all time and places. You either discover it, know it, and apply it in your life and put it into action and get a good result, or you stay ignorant because of your calcified ego, your improper reception of those laws of nature, and those eternal first principle based truths. You don't accept them, and therefore you don't align your behavior to them, and then you get chaotic results in our shared experience of human life. That's how it works, folks. That's the deepest aspect of the occult world is exploded onto you right there in a couple minute segment. And that is exactly what it is. How other people go, oh, that's not what the occult is. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. If you were in something to claim to be the occult, you were in a very low level of it that has you hoodwinked, boy. And you don't know what the real occult secret teachings are. I just gave them to you in a few minutes. Whether you understand them or not my fucking problem. Whether you apply them or not, that's your fucking problem and your karma. There's nothing wrong with my teaching. There's a problem with your reception. Let's get it straight. And nobody's going to tell a psychological adult who knows this deeply and with a high level of precision that I don't know what I'm talking about, and you as a know-nothing, ignorant, ego-driven person with total reception problems in the way do know. You don't know what you're talking about. See, that's the problem again, is that the adepts of these traditions have let the children run the whole house. They've let them run the whole house of earth. They've let them run the whole space of earth. And we got to start refusing to back down and stop giving ground to little psychological infants that are going to destroy the whole fucking world. That's what has to happen. You know, and that's what people unfortunately don't have the courage to do. They won't stand up to these violent infants in the world. Whether they be the dark occultists, the order followers, the sick, twisted cult that they're creating socially. You know, this mass psychosis of the woke world. You know, you ain't woke to a pile of dog shit is what you're woke to. You know? If you're even using the word woke to apply yourself, you're not awakened. You're not really spiritually awakened. You think you have some knowledge under your belt, and you've drank in shallow drafts from the Pierian spring. You haven't drank nearly enough knowledge into yourself from that fount of knowledge. You have a false level of what you know, think you know. And nobody's going to tell me that these ignoramuses know and I don't. You don't know what I know. Like I've said a million times, quite frankly, you would shit yourself if you knew what I know. If it got all put into your head in one shot, you'd faint. Diarrhea would be dripping down your leg and you would go unconscious. You wouldn't be able to process it. You got to take it in chunks over a long period of time, and most people aren't doing it. Most people are completely failing and negligent in that regard. When it comes to application of the trivium, you're not even doing the first part of the trivium, which is gathering the knowledge to yourself. That's the grammar stage, and you're not even doing that. Let alone coming to an accurate understanding and acting rightly upon it. Those two steps aren't even in your vision, let alone actively doing them. So let's go through this one step at a time. And this makes people see you can't put one slide of this out there. You got to put all 5 so that they're taken in context if you're going to put this out there. There's 5 eternal truths regarding why all police forces should and must be abolished. Point number 1, eternally true philosophy. Human beings do not emerge from their mother's wombs as immoral beings. Anybody out there that thinks human nature is either good or bad doesn't understand the nature of the human being as a programmable species. The nature of human beings are that we are a programmable species. That is our nature. Our nature is that we do not think any particular way from our inception of being born, from our conception and birth. It is not that we are any kind of angelic beings that know everything or are always good. Neither one of those things are human nature, and the people who think either one of these things are human nature have their head up their ass. I'm so sick of hearing, well, that's human nature. No, it's not human nature. If you have said that anything other than the fact that human beings are a programmable species is human nature, you are incorrect about what human nature is, and you don't know what human nature actually is. The nature of human beings is known, is discoverable, and is actually known by many people. And it is this: human beings are a programmable species. We can be programmed with good information that will lead to good behavior, or we can be programmed with bad information that will lead to bad behavior. Period. That is the nature of human beings. Immoral behaviors, if we're specifically talking about immoral, wrongful behaviors, meaning behaviors that initiate some form of violence or harm to other sentient beings. Okay, that's what we're talking about there. Immoral behaviors are learned or influenced. They are not in any way nature of a human being. Human beings don't come out of the womb doing wonderfully good things, and they don't come out of the womb doing devilishly bad things. Human beings come out of the womb as a being that is capable of receiving information in many different forms. Their behavior then becomes learned or influenced, in other words, informed through information, and then their behavior will go in a certain direction. That is the eternal truth of human nature. Nothing will ever make that untrue. It is not my opinion or perspective. It's how it actually works in nature. So immoral behaviors are learned or influenced by bad parenting, by wrong teaching, by the acceptance of this bad parenting, this wrong teaching, or the acceptance of unintentional or deliberate misinformation being put out into the world, and pre-existing accepted immoral cultural conditions. So let me slow down on this because it's a lot of words all, put together as a definition. Let's go one step at a time, okay? Immoral behaviors are not innate. They are learned or influenced. They're learned or influenced by bad parenting. This means our parents teach us incorrect information about how behavior should be. And then children pick that up from their parents and then think it's true because they learned it from their parents. It is learned or influenced from just simply wrong teaching from other places in the world other than parenting. This means teachers teach wrong things that are incorrect or immoral and tell people that's the truth. And then they accept it and they run with that behavior. The media teaches wrong teaching. Religions teach wrong teaching. So I'm talking about anything that is untrue and leads to immoral behavior because it is untrue and then it is accepted as truth. That is always going to lead to immoral behavior. As I said last week, one of the only things that does matter is whether you are correct or not. That is not ego. That is truth about how things work in the real world from a true pragmatic point of view. This is why if you are correct about what objective morality is, it will lead to right or correct behaviors, which are moral. That's why the word right and correct ultimately mean the same thing. That's why we use the same language. It's just in a different way. Does the word right mean correct or does it mean moral? When we say right or wrong, are we talking about whether someone was correct or not? Or are we talking about whether their behavior was moral or not? It can mean either one. That's why we call it right or wrong. Right behavior is going to be based upon right information or correct information. Wrong behavior or immoral behavior is going to be based upon wrong or incorrect information. So immoral behavior is also created, it's learned or influenced by unintentional or deliberate misinformation. So this means other people learn these things, and then they're putting it back out there for other people, and they're wrong. Therefore, they're doing an unintentional disservice. They're not doing it deliberately, it's unintentional, but they're incorrect anyway. And then they're teaching that which is incorrect. Or somebody could know what's true and deliberately be putting misinformation out there. That is done through the media and the dark occult. The media and the dark occult are always putting disinformation or misinformation out there to the public. They don't want people to understand the truth and come to a place of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. They want people accepting completely erroneous beliefs. That makes them easier to control. That creates more chaos in the world because people's behavior is going to be based upon that misinformation and misunderstanding. And then therefore they're going to be able to justify their existence as a control mechanism. So the last part of this is that immoral behaviors are learned or influenced by pre-existing yet accepted immoral cultural conditions and beliefs. Now, let me say that again. Pre-existing mean they're already here when you were born. Yet accepted. Pre-existing, meaning they were here long before you were here. They existed before you were born. Yet the culture as a whole, the people as a whole, have accepted these pre-existing beliefs. So you've grown up in a culture that was already practicing these cultural conditions and beliefs and accepted them as true, erroneously. Falsely. So you're in a culture that comprises a false religion already that was like that before you were born. That's what I mean by that part of the sentence. So in essence, if we put this all together, where does immoral behavior come from? Garbage input in the form of information that we receive as a human being from the time we're born until the time we grow into adults, and then moving even through that time period continuously. Garbage input in the form of information results invariably and unwaveringly, as law, 100% of the time, in garbage output in the form of behavior. That is human nature. That's the sentence that describes human nature. I'm so sick of hearing, well, people don't understand this, so that's just human nature. Oh, people want to do things this way, so that's just human nature. You sound like a completely, you sound like somebody that got shot in the brain and lived. You know, okay? You sound like you took a hollow point to the brain and somehow survived, but you ain't working on a full stack. Okay? That's what you sound like. When people talk about human nature and sound like this, you know how much I know you studied about human psychology and studied about deep psychology that they're not even going to teach in psychological schools? You sound like a complete idiotic moron, know-nothing fool that has not taken in one bit of information from day one, and it's sad. It's sad that, you know the old saying, it's better to be silent and allow people to think that you're a complete idiot than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. This is what the people who claim to know what human nature is and say it actually are. You've removed all doubt in your total level of imbecilic belief and your total idiocy. All doubt is removed. You should just keep your mouth closed and stop letting the diarrhea drool from it, because you are embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing yourself about how little you know about what the actual inherent condition of a human being is. You know, and this is the thing. People just err on the side constantly of total ignoramuses when it comes to human nature. This is actual human nature right here in one sentence. When it comes to the nature of a human being, we are programmable beings. Therefore, garbage input in the form of information results invariably and unwaveringly in garbage output in the form of behavior. That is the root level cause of all immoral human behavior. It has nothing to do with human nature. It does indirectly in the discoverable truth that human nature results from that human behavior results from the causal factor of human behavior, of human informational input. Let me say that again. Knowing that human nature is that we are programmable and that garbage input in the form of information causes garbage output in the form of behavior helps us to understand that that's all that human nature is. Human nature is simply that human beings can be programmed with information, informationally. That's all it does. It helps us to get down to that causal level of understanding of why do people behave the way that they behave. This is what I talked about on day one. Everybody wants to look at the symptoms. They want to look at the 3D symptoms. How did this play out? What is this institution doing? What is this political party doing? What does this religion, what are they doing in the world? It's irrelevant to the point where you can know where all dumb and immoral behaviors come from and worldviews come from if you understand the causal factors of what drive behavior. The causal factors of what drives behavior is what information got put into the human psyche to create that worldview, belief system, and ultimately drive that behavior. And if you want to solve it, you cannot solve it from the realm of effects. You cannot solve it from the realm of manifestation. It must be solved from the causal level of belief, of mind, of what information went in to form the core incorrect, erroneous beliefs that we are acting upon as a culture and a species. That's the only place the problem can ever be solved from. And I'm telling people that's the core cause, and therefore knowing that is the core solution. But they don't want to hear that. Because why? You know what that involves? That says, you know what? You can't rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic by rearranging, reforming institutions or doing things different in the 3D world. What the world that has to change is the inner world. The mind has to change. The spirit has to change. Then the external world changes, and the idiots out there who don't know themselves, and that's what the word idiot means, one who does not know themselves from the original Greek. It's not just an insult. It's an actual understanding that someone else doesn't know the nature of self. They don't know human nature. Okay? They're an idiot internally. So when you're an idiot and you don't know the self and you don't know the causal factors of what drives human behavior, you're going to be looking at all the symptoms and then reaching and grabbing in the dark for solutions. The solution is changing the operational software or operating system, which is the foundational understanding of how reality functions, a worldview. If you don't change that internal worldview, nothing in the external manifested reality can ever change. It's impossible according to the laws of the universe. Get over it. It just doesn't work that way. It's the equivalent, as I've said many times, of holding your hand over a fire and insisting, I will not be burnt. The flesh will live, it will survive. I will hold this over here for 5 hours and it will not burn, and I will not result with a charred stump. Good luck with that. But that's what you're doing when it comes to belief systems about government, police, what constitutes rights. You will never make the things that you believe about that untrue. You'll never make them true. You'll never make your erroneous beliefs about them true, and you'll never make the truths about them untrue. All you can do is get your ego out of the way and properly receive the truth regarding these first principles. That is what this process is. It's the death of ego to make way for proper reception, which, as I said, is what the word Kabbalah means. In the original Hebrew, it means proper reception, how to correctly receive the truth of natural law. And part of that is understanding where does human behavior come from, what drives it truly. The dark occult adepts know this. They know every aspect of it, which is why they can pull the wool over your weak-minded and weak-spirited eyes. And that's why they can own you and control you. That's why they're still your masters, and they're forever going to be your masters until you change what's going on in here. It doesn't matter what you attempt to change out there. Totally and utterly irrelevant. The thinking is what has to change first. And that's where all the resistance lies. That's where all the ego resistance lies. Because people are so tied up in the mind and in their current level of beliefs that they would rather die than change their thoughts about what they currently believe. And they would most certainly rather die than admit that they were wrong. And guess what, folks? I've gone through that process to discover this as truth. I thought all the ways that you currently think previously. Everything that I'm saying about how you think that you must change if you are to see the world change, I currently thought. All of those things that I talk about, drooling from the mouth, diarrhea, I was one of you. I thought every one of those false beliefs. I was poisoned with every one of those false beliefs myself. And I repented of them. Through hard self-work. Through sitting in front of a mirror and staring into the mirror, looking at the reflection coming back, hating it and crying about how bad I hated it until I changed it by an act of my will. Until I could stand looking into it and say, I love that being because I said I was wrong and I changed the way I thought because I was the problem. I no longer am contributing to that problem, but a lot of you are. Because you won't go through that dark night of the soul and say that you are wrong. I've already done that past tense. And trust me, I've done it so hard and in depth and intensely that if most people did it all at once, they would have committed suicide already. If they did it to the level I did it. So, it's not something to trifle with. There are methodologies to do, and we can go over shadow work methodologies. But guess what? The number one is take a mirror in your home and put a fucking chair in front of it and sit there for hours upon hours looking at yourself and what you currently believe is true. And ask yourself, is it actually true? What has this done to my life and others? What will clinging to this belief continue to do? To my own life and to the world at large. And when I asked myself those questions, I broke down. Week after week after week doing it. That was my shadow work. That's true self-respect. Taking another look at yourself and what you currently believe and think. And you know what? That's the hardest work there is to do. That's harder than even changing somebody else's thoughts. You think influencing somebody else's thoughts is hard. That's even harder. That's why so few want to do it. And then there's other techniques you can employ. You can employ shamanic techniques. You can employ techniques with sacred plant medicines. You can employ techniques with emotional freedom technique, EFT, tapping, working with meridian lines in the body. You know, nutrition is a self-improvement technique. That's inner alchemy physically. There's so many ways we could do whole shows on just techniques. But you know what the most brutal and effective technique is? Putting that chair in front of the damn mirror and sitting there with yourself quietly in a room. Let's see how well you do with that task. There's everybody's homework. I'll bet you most of you get D-minuses at the very best, if not outright Fs. Okay? And we need to do better at that. That's the real work. Don't think that the external work isn't important because I've said that. The internal work has to come first, though. And that's what most people, I'm taking off in this direction. You can go there. What you just said, go there, fine. Good luck with all of that. I'm going this way. You know, that's what 99.9999% of human beings will say. Because that's how much they hate themselves and have deep internal self-loathing issues and no true self-respect. So let's move on to the next point. The conditions explained in the previous slide are unknown and or unaccepted. Causal factors for immoral human behavior, just as I've said. So I'm just reiterating here formally in the philosophy as a statement that I want people to really just look at this text, read it and understand it deeply. Read it many, many, many times if you have to and understand it. That's why I'm putting no other visual distraction. This is core philosophy from a first principle perspective that needs to be understood regarding police. The conditions that I explained in the previous slide, that garbage input in information results in garbage output in behavior. Okay? They are unknown by the vast majority of the public, and or they are unaccepted by the vast majority of the public, but they are the causal factors for immoral human behavior. Now, again, if this is unknown, people remain in a level of ignorance. If it is unaccepted, and it is unaccepted. Look, folks, if you just put that first slide in front of somebody, if you put the first slide about where does immoral behavior come from and explain this is the real causal factor that we should be calling and attributing the human condition to, being programmable. I'm going to tell you at least over 99.5% of human beings will disagree. They refuse to accept it as being true. They will not accept it as being true. Okay? So right there we have a problem in reception. That people think they're correct about what the causal factors of immoral human behavior are. And you know what you'll hear? You'll hear, oh, it's just their genetics. It's just how they were born. They're either born high or low. It's just cultural. It's just this or that. No. It's exactly what I explained. As bad information goes in, bad behavior comes out like a computer. You put garbage programming into source code, the result on the screen you're going to get is going to be garbage and nonsensical. You put great written source code that is correct and has all the correct structure and algorithms in it, you're going to get great results when you input information and process it and get output on the screen. That's how it works. So those causal factors for immoral behavior are either unknown, through whatever means that they are unknown, people are dissuaded from looking into them, they're actually somewhat hidden, okay? Or people just haven't looked into it, or they're unaccepted, meaning people will hear it, will somewhat look into it, and yet they will reject the truth because of their hardened ego. So since most human beings either do not know or refuse to accept the truth regarding human behavior, they erroneously believe that the answer to the problem of immoral behavior is to set up a system of control to ostensibly provide protection. As we said, these systems of control only claim to provide protection, but can never actually provide it in nature. They set up these systems of control to ostensibly provide protection for human beings, such as government, police, military, etc., instead of correct moral education for the young. This is what is missing from all so-called educational systems, which are nothing more than indoctrination systems for the young. We have schools trying to teach people historical events, mathematics, verbal skills, language skills, all of that. But guess what? What good is any of that going to do if you don't know the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior? If you don't know the difference between moral behavior and immoral behavior? If you are not teaching correct objective morality to the young, you're not teaching them anything worth learning. Because without that as a foundation, anything else you teach them is going to be used for an immoral purpose somewhere down the line. This is an inescapably true logical understanding of first principles that can never be logically truly refuted by anyone with sound, logical, reasoning faculties. Only people that are deeply ensconced in an entrenched ego will try to refute this and insist that it is wrong. No, you have the problem with ego in not understanding it. You have the problem in spirit and soul through some form of trauma that you cannot work through and get over for correct reception of truth when it comes to moral principles. That's your problem, not mine. I'm speaking the truth. See, the problem is, yes, have traumas been done unto us, especially when we were young? Yes, absolutely. Were traumas that were done to you when you were young your fault? Absolutely not. someone else did that to you, and you were harmed, you were violated through the initiation and impartation of that trauma, whether it be physical, verbal, emotional. But guess what? Regardless of how or who did that to you when you were young, it is your responsibility as an adult to work through those traumatic incidents in your life and come out the other side a true moral adult. That's no one else's responsibility. That's actually no one else's problem but yours as an adult. You have to own that. That is what happened to you. It is not who you are. It was an experience. It is not your identity. I think David Icke did a profound interview with London Real recently, where he talked about get out of this ego identification. This is what I've been re-emphasizing week after week here on What on Earth is Happening. Ego identification will keep you rooted, thinking that you are your experiences, you are your job, you are your culture, you are how much money you make, you are what you have in your bank account. Has absolutely nothing to do with your true identity in consciousness as a spiritual sovereign being, having a human experience in the three-dimensional world of matter. What you go through here in trauma and experience is just that, an experience. And that is not to say we should not strive for a better experience or one that is devoid of violence and coercion. Because the 3D world is very real and it matters. It's not different than the spiritual world. It's one and the same. We should not elevate it or obviate it. Don't elevate the material above the physical and don't think it's insignificant. They are one and the same. We have to have a balanced worldview and perspective about that. Again, that's also what I've been saying here on What on Earth is Happening since day one. So, we need to implement correct moral education for the young and help them through their traumas, because that is our responsibility as an adult, and it's your responsibility to do that for yourself as an adult if you were not given that proper moral education as a child. It's no one else's responsibility but yours. And then it becomes our moral responsibility to do that for our young and take them out of these indoctrination camps called public school systems. Morally educate them properly according to the first principles of natural law, the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle. So moving on, in the third very important philosophical foundation of the 5 eternal truths regarding why all police forces should and must be abolished and replaced with nothing. All systems of control. Invariably, I have a mistake there. It said invariable instead of invariably. I'll correct that. I apologize. Systems of control invariably attract those who have the internal desire to control and abuse others because of their own psychological imbalances and inadequacies. This invariably creates a system entirely built upon corruption. The very idea of power over others attracts human beings with the absolute worst psychological and behavioral qualities. Such systems of control are inherently immoral by inception, on their foundation, at their roots, because they are built upon the false belief that some people may be granted or delegated rights that others do not possess. This can never be truly done. No one, if you don't have a right to do something as an individual, no one can give you that right. So if you just look at apply the behavior to yourself is the mantra. Here's the other mantra. Apply the behavior to yourself as an individual. Do you have the right as an individual to tax others, regardless of how altruistically you want to spend other people's resources? Do you have the right as an individual to implement a tax upon any other individual? Yes or no? There is a true answer. It's not a matter of opinion. And if you're being honest with yourself and you say that you're a nonviolent person that wants a voluntary interaction between human beings, which is what a moral person wants, the answer is no. You as an individual do not have the right to implement a tax on any other human being. Let's go to an even more foundational core and fundamental core philosophically. Do you own the body of another human being? Can you say that you rightfully own the body of another? Well, the answer to that is no, you're not a rightful master over someone else, and you cannot legitimately, morally make them your slave. Well, what is prohibition in any form or fashion? If I tell someone else they may not put a certain type of substance into their body, I am making indirectly a claim of ownership on their body. And I'm sad and disappointed at how few people in this so-called truth movement don't understand that. You're just fucking wrong if you don't understand that. Your ego is in the way. You're incorrect. You don't have first principles down correctly. No one else can tell anyone else as an individual what substance they may or may not put into their body, no matter how harmful it is to their body, because it's their body. It's their property. My body isn't someone else's property. So if I want to take a hand of psilocybin mushrooms at any given time, I'm going to do it, and no one else is going to control that behavior. And if you try to control it, you're going to be met with a hollow point round in the head. So try to do it and see what happens, boy. You're not going to get very far. At least the first one. First one ain't going to get too far. You might eventually get me, but trust me, I'll take a few before I go. Know it, like you know the sun's coming up tomorrow, son. You don't own my body, boy. You don't tell me what goes into it, boy. That's what prohibition is. Slavery. Prohibition is slavery. Taxation is slavery. You know, that's it. If you don't understand it, you're wrong. You haven't studied it enough. You haven't looked at it from a first principles, foundational point of view. And you're just wrong. And your ego's in the way of correcting that error. So, the very idea of power over others in this way attracts the human beings with the worst psychological and behavioral qualities. These systems of control are immoral by inception because they're built upon the false belief that some people can be granted or delegated rights that others don't possess. You don't have the right as an individual to enact prohibition. You don't have the right as an individual to enact taxation. You don't have the right as an individual to enact licensure. You don't have a right as an individual to violently punish people for doing things that are their rights, and or prevent them from doing things that are their rights, and or insist that they must do things that are based upon coercion and the threat of violence, which is called duress. You don't have the right to hold other people in duress. You don't have the right to do any of the other things that are based upon coercion, violence, duress, and slavery to another individual or group of people. You don't possess those rights. You're not a god. You're not able to receive those rights because those rights don't exist. Therefore, no other individual and no other group of individuals can ever delegate or grant those rights to any other individual or group of individuals. It can never happen in nature. You can only falsely believe through a religious cult belief context that you are allowed under moral law to conduct such behaviors. You are not. That is a false belief. You simply do not understand that you are immoral and wrong. So, any system that is set up to do that is immoral on its philosophical and moral foundations. It does not have the right to do these things. Therefore, the continuation of that institution is also immoral. This means that on its foundation, that institution never had the right to exist from a moral first principles perspective. Policing and government are euphemisms for slavery and never had a moral foundational right to exist. You're wrong if you think they did, ever. And I'll tell you what, a lot of my audience are brain dead in this regard. Not a lot, I'd say some of them are. They're brain dead in this regard. You're still statists. You don't understand the concept of anarchy, of true anarchy, which means no rulership It does not mean no rules, because natural law is always in effect. Therefore, always moral rules will be in effect regarding behavior. Whether people believe in those rules, accept them or not, that is irrelevant. You can never grant or delegate a right to any individual or group that it does not exist for an individual. And the rights that we say we can delegate for government or police do not exist for individuals. And if you think they do, you're wrong. You're morally wrong, and it's an immoral belief. To even believe that you can do that is impinging upon others' freedoms, because you're saying slavery can be justified and condoned. And that makes you a supporter of slavery. That's an immoral belief on its foundation. So let's move on to the next tenet. An eternally true truth and principle regarding why police must be abolished at all places. Because they are an immoral institution on their foundational face. So point number 4. Those corrupt human beings from these institutions of control eventually believe that they have the quote-unquote right to rule everyone else, and they are willing to use coercion and violence to keep their subjects, or slaves, if we're really dropping the euphemisms, in line. Because the belief in so-called authority is so widespread, most people actually believe that this class of corrupt and violent human beings have legitimate moral authority to command the behaviors of other people. Imagine this. We still believe culturally, as a whole, as a species, in kingship, in the divine right of kings. We've just diffused that so-called right to an oligarchical group of individuals calling themselves government. And now they are the new kings or gods of society. They're the new pharaohs, the new kings, the new pharaohs, the new gods on earth. Imagine. This is what people who believe in government and policing actually think. You're immoral trash. You're immoral trash. You're immoral trash. If you think that that is a legitimate system of belief and legitimately moral. You're fucked up in the brain. You're actually immoral. Your parents were probably immoral pieces of dirt that hammered this nonsense into your brain. And you, as a continued immoral piece of dirt, because of how much trash taught you, trash beliefs, turned into a piece of trash. All right? Is that saying it hardcore and in your fucking face enough? And I'll say it right to your face in person. See me when you have the time. All right? I'll tell it to you in person. Because it's true and it's not an attack. And if you tried to attack me physically, you'd see what would happen. All right? And that's not an act of aggression. I'm saying you put your hands on me in aggression. I'm going to defend myself, and I know how. And trust me, it ain't going to be to prove who the better physical contestant is. It won't be about a contestant, a combat, contest physically. You'll find out what my rights are. And I don't care who you are. Most human beings even believe that this corrupt class of human beings should possess a monopoly on the use of physical force, and that everyone else should abdicate their inherent right and responsibility of self-defense to this corrupt class of human beings. Imagine this. You're going to take my right to defend myself away? You're going to take my right to physically defend myself away? Not without bloodshed, motherfucker. Not without bloodshed, motherfucker. You'll find out. And guess what? If it goes down that way in this lifetime, so be it. It goes down that way in this lifetime. Then I'll be right back doing the work again in another lifetime. Or in another place. Wherever I'm called, wherever I'm needed, that's where I'll go. But you know what? You're not going to tell me what my rights of self-defense are. You're not the arbiter of truth, and you're certainly not God. And this is what our European brothers and sisters need to understand. You've been hammered shit into your brain since the day you were born over there in King and Queen land. Shit's been hammered into your brain since the day you popped out of your mother's womb. And you accepted and swallowed it. And this is what I'm talking about. That may not be your doing when you were real young, but it should be your responsibility. It is your responsibility to undo the crap that was hammered into your brain regarding self-defense and regarding firearms. And I hope you're doing it now with what's going on, with the violence that's going on. I really hope some people are understanding that Americans are going to be in a far better position to defend our bodies and our rights and not go into total abject servitude. You guys are going to be kissing your own asses. You better get real flexible and pucker the fuck up. You better get real flexible so that your mouth can touch your anus, and you better pucker up, boys and girls, sons and daughters, because you're going to be kissing your own assholes on the way in the cattle car to the concentration camps. That's what's going to happen to you in Europe. Most of you anyway. Switzerland might have a little harder problem there, I think. Yeah. But the rest of Europe, you guys better start practicing in the mirror, puckering up and liking the taste. Because I'll tell you what, you're going to have a real hard time with what you allowed. And it ain't going down like that here, boys and girls. It ain't going down like that here. And anybody who thinks it is, you're going to find out. Let's hope it doesn't go that way. That's what everything I've been doing is trying to push it to not go that way. But guess what? If it goes that way, you're going to find out. So, this is the fourth tenet. Okay? The corrupt human beings who gravitate to control-based institutions believe they have the right to rule everybody else, and they're willing to use coercion and violence to keep their slaves in line. Unfortunately, this belief in authority is so widespread, people believe that they have this right. And most people even believe they have the right to have a monopoly on the use of force, and that the right of self-defense should be taken away from other people and given only to these corrupt individuals. This is the most asinine, bullheaded way of thinking that anyone can ever accept. It's completely a false cult religious belief. And that's all it ever will be. Now, fifth and arguably most important, which I didn't really have time to get to last week. This builds upon and finishes all the other four tenets of why that are eternal truths about why police must be abolished. For those with an adequate and clear reasoning capacity. This means if your brain isn't hammered shit already, okay? If you have the ability to truly think clearly and you're not ruled by your emotions of like reasoning, of thinking clearly because your emotions are in the way. Hey, you can even make the statement, Mark, your anger gets out of control sometimes. That's letting your emotions rule you. No, really it's not. It's actually justified anger. It's actually rightful indignation at how ignorant and stupid other people are that is affecting the freedom of people who actually do understand freedom and want to be free. That anger is coming from a justified place and position. And I don't just run with it unnecessarily. I let it out cathartically and I let it out creatively through putting this work out. I let it drive me as a source of fuel, knowing what is wrong in the world and then actually doing something to correct it. That's called the sacred gift of anger. And okay, I could hit the gas pedal too hard sometimes on that, but guess what? I'm still using it correctly. Non-justified anger is getting angry at really dumb shit and other people for doing things that don't matter. Oh, you don't like it. Oh, your favorite TV show got preempted this week and I'm mad. My sports team didn't win. I'm really angry about that. You're a little boy and a little girl. You're not getting angry for the right reasons. It's a psychological infancy mindset. So what I'm talking about here is people who have an adequate and clear reasoning capacity in the mind. That they're not under such mind control, they can follow philosophical reasoning and philosophical progressions. Meaning they're not reasoning from their emotions, they're actually reasoning from first principles. And this is part of the problem. You can't even have a discussion like this today. No one will, hardly anyone will take it from a first principles perspective. You say the first thing they don't like to hear, and where do they go? name calling. They go into ad hominem attacks because they can't reason from a first principles perspective. They can only reason from my feelings are hurt because you said something I don't agree with. And I'm going to say, I don't give a damn whether your feelings are hurt. I don't care how offended you are. This is the eternal truth. And I could philosophically and morally prove it by explaining progressively in a very stepwise progression, moral first principles to get you to come to an accurate and logical understanding of why it is so and why this is truth and not conjecture or belief or opinion. See, part of the problem is these people are solipsists. Go back to show number 1. I talked about why solipsism was such a dangerous ideology. Solipsism is Satanism, ultimately. It is the devil. It is utter satanic mindset belief from a deep level satanic perspective. If you think there's no objective truth, if you think there's no objective truth regarding morality, that is a satanic mindset. That means you are saying human beings are the arbiters of truth. It's all subjective, all opinion-based. We can make up whatever we want to fucking make up about what right and wrong are, what moral behaviors or immoral behaviors are. And we are the arbiters of that arbitrary decision. That's why it's called arbiter. To be the arbiter or arbitrator of something means you decide it based on your whims, based on your preferences, based on your beliefs. You're not accurately understanding the truth of what is and objectively aligning your perception to that objective externalized truth that exists independently of your own consciousness. If you are dead and gone, that truth still remains. It did not depend upon what you thought about it or your opinion of it or your likes or preferences. That's what it means to be objectively true. Solipsism says everything's an opinion. Nothing is objectively true. Well, why bother looking into anything? If there's no truth, you can believe whatever the hell you want and it magically becomes the way it is. Why would you look into anything, including science, including the physical world, if nothing is true? And this is what people think is true regarding behavior, that there's nothing true regarding it. We can just make it all up. So, for those with adequate, clear reasoning capacity, the understanding of the 4 previous points or slides should result in the inescapable logical conclusion that it would always be infinitely more dangerous and destructive to human life and freedom to be ruled and enslaved by a corrupt and psychopathic class of human beings who almost everyone erroneously believes has the right to do the immoral behaviors that they do on a daily basis, than to possibly find ourselves in a situation where violent and destructive gangs of human beings are causing harm and chaos everywhere. 100% objectively, eternally true statement. Doesn't matter whether you understand it, doesn't matter whether you agree with it. Let's break down what this means. What this statement means is that if you have let's say the only 2 possibilities break down in the world, 2. Violent and destructive gangs are roaming the streets everywhere in all the world, doing harm to others. Okay? Is that more preferable to a situation where a controlling class of human beings enslaves everyone, tells everybody, we're essentially gods and the arbiters of truth. You must obey our arbitrary decrees as our subjects or slaves. Which situation is more preferable? I'm telling you definitively and factually. The scenario where people believe that violent and coercive gangs of people calling themselves the police have the moral right to do the violent and coercive behaviors that they perform on a daily basis is infinitely more dangerous to human life and freedom every single day than roaming gangs of people who don't give a damn about anybody's rights, violently doing harm to people every day on the street, but nobody believes they have the right to do it. See, this is where the perception of a right becomes infinitely more dangerous. This is where the mind makes the scenario infinitely more dangerous. Would you believe a mafia gang has the right to rule over you? Do we believe gangs of criminals on the street that are not the police would have the right to criminally rule over people? Would we believe that they have authority and the rights, even if they claim this is our right to do this? What if the mafia got all together, all the mobs of the world banded together in one mass mafia and said, we have the right to do all the violence that we do as an institution, as a gang? Would people believe them? Most people would say, you're full of shit and we're going to defend ourselves because you're the mafia. But we don't do that when it comes to the police, do we? No. Then all of a sudden we think they have the right to do it, because it's based on government and the concept of authority, which is a religious cult. That's a satanic death cult. It's an infinitely more dangerous satanic death cult than all the mafias of the world coming together into a super mafia and claiming the right to rule over others. Because guess what, folks? That's exactly what happened. That's what government is. That's what policing is. And people don't understand that that's what it is. It's infinitely more dangerous for the police to have that belief of them having the right to do these things, because then other people let them rule unchallenged. So let me read it again and hammer the belief into your thick skull. For those with adequate clear reasoning capability, the understanding of the previous 4 points that we made in this section should result, keyword there being should, you should have the ability to reason out the inescapable logical conclusion that it would always be infinitely more dangerous and destructive to human life and freedom to be ruled and enslaved by a corrupt and psychopathic class of human beings who almost everyone in the world erroneously believes has the quote-unquote right to do the immoral behaviors that they do on a daily basis, than to possibly find ourselves in a situation. This definitely wouldn't result, by the way. This is a possibility if we do away with all policing. And guess what? I guarantee you, if we do find ourselves in this situation I'm going to describe, a lot more people would wake up and say, you don't have the right to do this. And they would wake up to the solution of proper moral education, which I'm going to talk about. Okay? They would wake up to self-defense and the importance of proper moral education of the young. If we found ourselves possibly in the situation where violent and destructive gangs of human beings are causing harm and chaos to people everywhere. Here's the answer to why this is true. At least in the latter situation of gangs of mafia roaming everywhere and doing harm to everybody, no one would erroneously believe that such people would have the quote-unquote right or quote-unquote authority to conduct such immoral behavior. And that the victims of their criminal actions, and also what would happen is the victims of their criminal actions and behaviors they would come to the acceptance that they themselves would have the right to use self-defensive force to stop these gangs of people from continuing to conduct such harm against them. Think about it. If gangs ran society instead of government and police, would anybody believe that the gang has the right to do that violence? If drug gangs do rule parts of Mexico, think about that. The mafias of Mexico rule whole parts of the country. Whole parts of that state are ruled by the drug cartels. Do people believe that the violent drug cartel mafioso criminals have the right to rule over the people? Of course they don't think that they have that authority or right. We're in an infinitely more chaotic and dangerous situation from a perspective of mind and mentality and belief. We're in a cult. A cult is ruling the world that has convinced fucking people that they have the right to rule them. What's more dangerous? A mafia who's just doing violence to people who nobody thinks has the right to rule them? Or a fucking satanic death cult that has convinced people over the generations and centuries that they actually have the right to do this violence to them and that they can't challenge them? Because they're the authorities and they have the right to do this and the other people don't have the right to stop them from doing it. Imagine. No, this is correct. And if you don't think so, you are incorrect. You are wrong. You are immoral for being incorrect and wrong. The end. And do the internal work to get your head right. Nobody can do that but you. I can float the truth out there for you and it can be perfectly explained. And it is. It's perfectly explained. Like no one else will do it. Like no one else will sacrifice the time of their life to do it. I've perfectly explained it. It is you who are in ego. It is you who has a block to the reception of these eternal truths. Work with yourself. Sit in front of a fucking mirror. Do some shadow work. Turn off all other distractions. Put your phone in airplane mode and sit in front of a mirror for a couple of hours and ask yourself, what ails me? I've asked it, and I've asked it in more of an even, what's the word when you ask a question you're not really looking for the answer? I've asked it in a rhetorical way. Because I can't actually sit and answer that question for everyone. You have to answer it. The question is, what ails you, brother? What ails you, sister? Why are you in the situation mentally and spiritually that you are in? You are broken if you don't understand these eternally true philosophical and moral principles. And you are broken because of internal trauma. You are broken because of trauma of the heart, of the spirit, ultimately. No one can repair that damage but you. You must do the shadow work, that internal work. I can't do it for you. So, these five slides, I feel, with the exception of the couple of little errors I have to correct with grammar or spelling, are probably some of the most important philosophical slides that I have ever made in any of my material on What on Earth is Happening. They have to be deeply understood in context. If you're going to share them, I highly recommend putting them all together or making one big long JPEG, put them together in Photoshop, make one big long JPEG that you could then download and read. But they really shouldn't be separated from each other. They should be in context with this show or last week's show. So let's move on, and I'll finish up my slides because I want to eventually get to the reading. We're probably going to have to do it next week of Confessions of a Bastard Cop. I feel like getting these foundational moral principles are infinitely more important than, even spending time to advance the material and do it faster. So I feel a lot of people still don't understand this. So again, the question that you have to ask to understand that last slide of philosophy, that last paragraph of text is, do most people believe that this gang has the right to rule them? If people see this gang of, hooded, perhaps drug cartel people from Colombia or somewhere in South America coming for them, do you believe that this gang has the right to rule our society? Most people are going to go, you know what? Those are violent criminal gangs competing for behavior, competing for, territory to sell drugs and willing to kill anybody to take that territorial region to create a monopoly on who can sell or buy in that area. And they don't really have any right to conduct this violence. People have the right to conduct transactions when it comes to any substance because it's their body. But you don't have the right to tell somebody else, you can't operate here, and if you do, we'll kill you. That's criminal thuggery. That's what the government does. That's what gangs do. That's called criminal gang behavior. Creating monopolies like that. So everyone has to go through them. Look, in a perfect world, everybody would have gotten together with firearms and hunted people like this down to total extinction. You don't like that? You think that's messy? Tough. Either you morally educate people like this when they're young and they don't become criminal gang members like this, or you got to do the messy work of hunting them down. Hunting them like the animals they've become. This is a criminal gang. Does anybody believe that they have the right to rule others? No, no one believes that. No one who's not mentally retarded actually believes that criminal gangs like this have the right to rule them. But, if we look at the flip side of this, we keep the same exact question on the scoreboard, okay? Do people think that this gang has the right to rule them? We don't need to change the question. Just flip the image. Almost everybody believes this gang has the right to rule them because they are an aspect of government and they are authority. Somebody else gave them the rights that they have. We delegated rights to this subclass of people, calling them the police. They have rights that other people don't have. And so, yeah, they have the right to enact authority and coercion and violence in society. No, ladies and gentlemen, they don't have that right. They never have had that right. Going back to the slide, this is all it ever has been. This is all it is now. This is all it ever will be. For all time. The end. It only ever has been slavery, and it has been nothing else. And if you have ever been a supporter of this institution, you are a condoner and a supporter of slavery. And you are immoral for having done so or to continue to do so. Get as fucking offended as you like. It'll never make it untrue. And I don't care who you are. I don't care in what capacity you're involved in my life. Get as offended as you fucking want. It's still true and you're still wrong. That's it. So I'm going to close this section of the presentation with a comparison of my own moral and philosophical logic with that of one of the founding fathers of America to show you that I do not place these men on pedestals. When they are wrong, I will say that they are wrong. So one of the authors of the Second Amendment, James Madison and George Mason, okay? He said, if men were angels, and he was a federalist, meaning he believed in creating a strong federated government, meaning he believed in continuing the concept of authority. See, this is why people don't understand the Declaration of Independence. They said when any government becomes destructive to the aims of human freedom, which is under natural law, that we have the right to alter or abolish it. Even though it uses the word alter, it still claims we have the right to abolish it. I would just say we needed to take that a little bit further and say all government has always been destructive to our natural inherent rights and freedoms. Therefore, people who understand on its foundation it is a inherently immoral institution have always had the right naturally and inherently to abolish it. That's how I would have written the Declaration of Independence. And it would have said, I'm not your slave. You don't own me. I don't consent. You don't rule over me. You're not my authority. You're not God. There is only one authority anywhere in the multiverse, and that is the creator of the universe. And if you cannot prove that you are that force, you're not authority of anything. So, when that force presents itself to me in the flesh or in any other form, and I definitively know that it is that force, that's when I'll bend the knee and say, that's my authority. Unless someone can prove that, you're just a hooligan fucking thug claiming to own other people. And that makes you part of the Satanic Death Cult. So, did the founding fathers understand the actual reality of natural law that we need to deeply understand in its fullness? No, they didn't. They were flawed human beings, just like a lot of listeners of this show that don't get it in its fullness. I'm trying to push everyone past them in consciousness and help them to understand natural law in its fullness. Because if you don't understand in its fullness, you know what happens? What we have now. That's what happened following the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. That's why it didn't go far enough in its moral understanding and application. And neither did any of these men. They were the best we had in consciousness at the time. They were the best that we had in consciousness at the time. Was it the ultimate be-all and end-all in consciousness? No. Should they be put on pedestals and worshipped as gods? No. This is the whole point of this. We can move past. They allowed us at their level of understanding to get to our level of understanding, which surpasses theirs. It's like somebody boosting someone up with holding their shoe and foot and boosting them up to a higher level than they're at, and then we can stand on their shoulders. It doesn't mean that they were perfect or should be worshipped as such. Get that straight about how I view these men and women. I don't place them up on pedestals and never have. And if you think that's true, you haven't actually listened to what's being said. You've interpreted it according to your false understanding of it, your erroneous and incomplete understanding of it, because you take sound bites and you run with them. You don't listen to the fullness of what I've said by watching every episode in its entirety. And then you think you understand what I've said and you have an incomplete understanding of it. So, this is an example through James Madison of flawed moral and philosophical logic. He believed that government should be instituted as a societal institution because of this quote, because of this reason. This is his foundational worldview of why government is necessary. He says, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. That means for as long as men, meaning humanity, is not morally perfect, we have to institute government to punish these imperfect beings and create a society that is based on the belief in that authority. Nothing could be more untrue and dangerous. As much as I respect him for trying to create it in a limited capacity, it doesn't make a difference. You're wrong from a philosophical and moral foundation, from an axiomatic perspective anyway. Does it mean that I don't appreciate that people who were doing the best at their level of consciousness were doing what they were doing then? No, it doesn't mean that. It means I still appreciate their effort, because if they didn't make that effort and if they weren't willing to die to create that effort, we wouldn't even be able to have this discussion today. We'd be ruled by psychopathic kings and queens, even more so than we already are. And a lot of people don't understand that. That's why they shit on the foundations of America instead of understanding what they paved the way for as a potential future and as a promise in the future, for the future. Here's sound moral and philosophical logic coming from me. Not to put myself up on a pedestal either, but my understanding of natural law goes far beyond most of the founding fathers, with the possible exception of Thomas Paine, possibly even beyond his. Here's my retort to James Madison's quote, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. I correct that lack of understanding of natural law and moral law, and I say, since humans aren't angels, none are fit to rule. Read it 1,000,000 times if you have to. Since humans aren't angels, and they most certainly are not, including myself. Since humans aren't angels, none are fit to rule. To even make the claim that you are the authority of anyone, or that you have authority over anyone, is such unmitigated hubris and gall that you think you're the God of creation and eternity. To even condone it, which is what the supporters of police do, to believe that others are gods and they have the right, you're a condoner of blasphemy. I would say most of those people in this country, you claim you're Christian and you are shit Christians. You are fake ass shit Christians. You don't know the definition of true Christianity. The Christ of your Bible would wipe his ass with your face. Okay? That's what he'd do to you. He wouldn't take out the switch and beat you like the money changers. He'd take a big dump on your face. All right? Because you're fucking immoral trash, claiming to be Christian. I take high offense to it, that other people would dare to say that they follow the teachings of Christ of the New Testament. And you want to say you're Christians. You're pond scum. You use that term, Christ, in blasphemic terms. And I'll make it religious if you want to make it religious. All the Christians out there that believe in the authority of the government, It's 100% blasphemy. It's idolatry is what it is in your own religion. I don't believe in your religion. I believe in the religion called truth, which the creator of the universe placed into effect by law. And I believe in coming into an understanding of those laws and bringing our behavior into alignment with them. That's my religion, and that's the only true religion. There is no other true religion. You've turned the teachings that are attempting to align behavior with that into a religion, put up a whole bunch of nonsense around it in the form of religious trappings, and then you want to call yourself Christian. See my presentation, fake-ass Christians, because that's what people who believe in this junk are. You're believers in junk trash religion. And it's blasphemy against the God of creation and the even concept of Christ in the New Testament. It's idolatry and blasphemy. And I'll say that right to the people who watch this show or who have ever watched this show calling themselves Christians. You're trash. You're Christians of nothing. You're Christians in name only, and you're trash. So, I'm going to start because we're going to have about 10 minutes, but we have very little time. That is the end of the slides, and now for this section. And, you know, I did my best to try not to get nuts, but I still went nuts. Because guess what, folks? I think most people in today's world, you're beyond teaching. You're beyond understanding. You love being garbage. You love what you've created in the world, which is a prison of probably which we're not going to escape. You think you're good people, and you're garbage. And I'm even talking to some of my viewership, and I don't really care whether, if it gets you so offended, you turn the fucking show off right now, do it. I don't care. I'm teaching truths that are eternal. And I want to talk to the people in ego who still think government is legitimate. I still want to talk to all the people in ego who still think the police are a morally legitimate institution. You're garbage. Morally. You're not good people. You are a condoner of slavery. You only believe you're a good person. You don't know what it really means to be a good person in your heart and in your mind. You think you are, and you've bought a false understanding. You've bought into a false understanding of what it means to be a truly good person. You are not that. You are claiming to be that when you are, in fact, in reality, not that. No one else will tell you that because they're chicken shit cowards who won't say that to your face, so I will. With that being said, that concludes the slide portion of these teachings. And I want to get confrontational and right up in people's face about it. Now, here's what I think. I think the problem is not enough people have taught it like this. This is why other people think it's just fine for them to continue their beliefs. It's not okay. If you continue to think that these institutions are morally acceptable and legitimate, you are my enslavers and enemies. That's where we've come. I've taught it enough perfectly for the proper reception and understanding. And I will not give false hubris. I will not give false humility, I'm sorry. I will not kowtow to false humility and say, oh, I had gaps in my teaching method and I didn't do it adequately. No, fuck you. I've done it perfectly. The problem is in you and your ego. Your ego is hardened 20,000 times harder than mine ever was. And I will not be told that I didn't teach it correctly. You're the problem. You didn't receive it correctly. I just dropped half of my drink all over. And knocked down my show clock. You're not going to own me. You're not going to dictate my worldview. I'm not your fucking slave. So, before going into this, I'll do it with the time remaining. Let's switch over to the slides, and I'll do this part first and then go back to it. If you feel you've received value about these eternal truths that I have taught, and it's helping you get out of your thick-headed fucking ego, then you can continue to help our efforts here at What on Earth is Happening to reach and awaken the dead by either getting physical copies of items such as DVDs and flash drives or t-shirts, keychains, buttons, stickers, etc. by going to gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. So keep it on the slides for a moment. You could take me up on the offer of the ARC drive, which I talked about earlier, which is an offer of a 1 terabyte hard drive that you send to me, and I send it back filled with research data that helped me arrive at these eternal truths, these unwavering eternal truths in the form of research information. In other words, you can become as knowledgeable as me with this drive. Most people will never do it because they think that they can get the sound bite and be enlightened. You have to go through a lot of material in mind and work on your heart intelligence first before you're going to be at this level of enlightenment. And I am at a level of enlightenment. This whole idea, never claim you're enlightened. No, enlightenment comes first. It comes from taking in the knowledge of what's really going on. And then true enlightenment is, what are you going to do with it? You're going to put it out there and teach it in an unapologetic way because it's eternal truth? Or are you going to kowtow and pander and say, I'll exercise all this false humility and say, I really don't know much. All I know is that I don't know. No, I know quite a bit, and it's true. What I know is true. That's why it constitutes knowledge, not opinion. So if you want to get the ARC, it's been an offer. It's still there. Lots of people taking me up on it and trying to learn. Not enough, but lots. You can go to whatonearthishappening.com/ARC. And if you want to make a straight donation to our efforts, you can go to whatonearthishappening.com/donate. 11 methods of donation up there. 6 cryptocurrencies: PayPal, Patreon, Venmo, check, money order. One of the great ways that I want to thank people is by making a technological donation. You can click on that button on the donation page and click donate supplies from our Amazon wish list. This has been a great form of donation. If you don't want to do it through monetary means, you could actually contribute donation by buying equipment that we require to continue What on Earth is Happening and have it shipped directly to my studio here in Philadelphia. There are a couple of items up there now because some new needs have arisen. So we do need a couple of tech items. So that would be a wonderful way of people to donate. I thank everyone who has donated in any form. We really appreciate your efforts, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have made this work easier for all of us. So thank you. All right, let's step back to Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop. We're going to get to the full reading of this next week, okay, because there isn't enough time. But let me go back to the slide with me in the window, and let me just tell you what this is going to be. So next week, I am not doing any slides. I'm not preparing any slides. I've prepared and delivered the slides that I want to give for the duration of these 2 past shows. So, all I'm going to put up next week is this slide, and then I'm going to switch to, I'll just show people, just take it down briefly, and I'll show people what the document's going to look like. I'll include this with the show for next week. Just go either in the window or full screen. Okay, I'm going to place this up on the show next week, and we're going to go through the whole PDF, and I'm going to read it in its entirety, and we're going to talk about this confession, because that's what this is. This is a confession. Let's go back to it in window. Sorry. Yep. And let me make it a little smaller. Good. I'm going to show this document next week, and we're going to go over it in detail, because you're going to see what the actual mentality of the vast majority of police really are from their own point of view. Not from me talking about it, right from their lips to your ears. That's all the time we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, government is slavery. We'll see you right here to continue with part 3 next week.